Hi, thanks for joining us for this episode of Doug Has Questions. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe. We're available if you want to watch us on YouTube, or if you just want to listen to the podcast version on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And each episode goes live on Thursday morning. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and we're happy to have you listening. Welcome to this edition of Doug Has Questions. My guest today, Andrew Cremata, former mayor in Skagway, which is the role you had when I met you, but also fisherman, writer, hustler, entrepreneur,
Yeah.
all of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above. So welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Doug. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, no, it's always been great talking to you. So let's start off. What was Andrew's early life like? Where'd you grow up at?
Well, so I grew up in Tampa, Florida. That's where I was born and raised.
Okay.
And so I came from a very religious household. And so, I mean, you've known me for a number of years now, so you know I'm not exactly a religious person. So, and I was in Tampa, and it was very hot. That's the thing I remember most about growing up is how hot it was. But, you know, I developed a love for fishing. My grandmother, who was Cuban, she was a big fisherman, and her and my dad and the other members of the family, we all went fishing as kids. And so when we weren't doing something religiously oriented, we were outdoors. You know?
Outdoors. All right.
So
Well, that's a pretty good way to grow up.
Yeah, I always dreamed of coming to Alaska, right? Growing
So
up.
So out of Tampa, what was that? Freshwater, salt? When I think of Florida, I always think of offshore saltwater fishing, but there's got to be some like stream fishing and river fishing there too, some lakes and everything. What was your favorite, or were you doing one of more than the other?
I did saltwater fishing. So I was right there on the bay. I did saltwater fishing, and in Tampa, there is definitely a dichotomy between the freshwater fishermen and the saltwater fishermen.
Yeah.
And I got to admit, the saltwater fishermen look down on the freshwater fishermen, you know.
Yeah.
And it's bass and, you know, whatever else they catch, crappie. I went one time. I went all the time fishing in saltwater. But I went one time freshwater fishing with my brother-in-law, and we caught these little bass. And I was like, well, what's the point of that if we're catching bait all day, you know? So as I got older, I got a boat, and then I got another boat. We fish offshore, we fish inshore, fish the flats. But growing up, we fished off the piers and the bridges and the beaches. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what's nice about fishing there is there's so much variety. I remember one time fishing on the Gandy Bridge. In one afternoon evening of fishing, I caught 30 species of fish.
Wow.
So that's the cool thing about it. You have all this variety, and you can target different species, and different than fishing up here. But the other key difference is the fishing is just phenomenal in Alaska, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's just, you know, you catch a lot of big fish, and it's not that hard to do it. I think if you struggle to catch fish in Alaska, it's time to find a new hobby.
Find a new hobby. Yeah. So you mentioned your grandmother was from Cuban descent.
Yeah.
At what time period was that? After the Revolution, during the Revolution that they came to the States, or was it well before that?
Before. So they came over before. So they came to Tampa. So like the early immigrants that came over from Cuba, the ones that came over on those earlier waves, they came to Tampa primarily. Mm-hmm. And the later ones that happened after Castro, they tended to come through Miami. So there's a big battle between Tampa and Miami over who invented the Cubano first, right? And they're similar, but they're a little different. You know, there's a lot of contention. Uh-huh. My grandfather on that side of the family, somewhere in that lineage, they came from the Canary Islands.
Okay.
And so they came to the Canary Islands, and my grandfather met my grandmother in Cuba. But the way it was told to me, and I don't know if this is true, this is family lore, right? But you had to come through Cuba for 2 years from Spain, Canary Islands, wherever it was, and you had to spend 2 years there before you could come into the United States. And so then they came into the United States from there through New York and came down to Tampa, right? You immigrated through New York. Yeah. They settled in Tampa. So interestingly enough, you know, I ended up with blonde hair and blue eyes. That is from that side of the family.
Really?
Yeah, my mom's side of the family. They were on some of the original Roanoke settlers, that lineage.
See, that fits more.
Yeah, and well,
that's kind of what
they were all dark hair, brown eyes, and very tall. So if you looked at my sister, my father, anyone on that side of the family, I am unrecognizable. I tower above them. I have blonde hair and blue eyes. But if you go back a couple of generations, my grandfather on the Cuban side had blue eyes.
Okay.
And so just a weird mix of genes. My sister looks very Hispanic, and I don't. But we have the lineage.
Have the lineage. So growing up, there was a lot of the Cuban refugees were still coming over into Miami when we were younger.
Right.
So was that a topic of discussion with your grandparents and stuff, talking about what Cuba used to be like? Did that come up at all? Was there any?
Absolutely. You know, my grandfather was more of a difficult man to know, so I didn't have a lot of conversations with him. But my grandmother and I would talk a lot. She would take care of me a lot when my parents were working growing up. And, you know, the conversations I remember pretty vividly, she did not like Castro because Castro had come into Cuba and had ruined all of the memories she had as a child growing up there, you know, the fondness that she had for it. So she definitely had great memories of Cuba from pre-revolution days and wasn't too happy about where it ended up. Plus, you know, she was also, you know, in the same religious person, and there was religious persecution happening as well. So I think a lot of her family that were still in Cuba might have been experiencing that as well, because they all came over eventually. A very large extended family growing up.
So you had family that was coming over with on the boats and everything into Miami?
No, they had come over before that, at least before I was born.
Okay.
So nobody came in during the 70s. I was born in 1970.
Yeah.
But some extended family did.
Okay.
Extended family, but some of them I didn't know very well.
Yeah.
It was a large amount. My grandmother, her name was Adelpha, and she had I think 5 sisters and 1 brother, and they all lived in Tampa. It was names like Humbelina and Lily and Tony and Laura.
Yeah.
So and they were all.
Yeah. The reason I was
people.
asking is just those. You see those things happening to other people,
Right.
right? But then when you have people that are directly involved with that and experiencing that, those stories a lot of times gives close relatives a very clear understanding of that, or a more clear understanding than the rest of us that are just reading about it or watching it on TV.
Yeah, and you know, their experience, you know, they were, even when I was a kid, the whole family was very poor. I mean, my grandfather and my father went into the family business. They delivered Cuban bread. So I would go on the bread route with them when I was growing up, very small, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, even into my teen years until my dad started a different line of work. You get up at 4 in the morning, you go to the bakery, you bag all the bread, and then you drive it around on the route to all of the different restaurants and grocery stores and drop off the fresh Cuban bread and get back home maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then you do it again the next day. You know, they worked hard. And then my dad started, when I was, I think, 13, my dad's got into a different line of work doing furniture repair, antique restoration, and that was a much more lucrative business. So life got different after that. We were able to afford to do more things, not just go to the fishing pier. We could go out in a charter boat.
So going to the pier, how much of that was you just wanted to go fishing, and how much of that was providing food for the family? I imagine it's a dual purpose. It's both of those, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. When I was younger, so we didn't just, you know, go fishing. We were crabbing off of the piers. We'd go out to the causeway. You get a piece of string, and you tie a piece of chicken to it, and you throw it out, and then you kind of sit and wait. You put like 5 or 6 of them out there, and you sit and wait, and then the line will tighten, and it's just regular string, and you pull it in real slow, and when it comes in, there'll be a crab or maybe 2 crabs eating the chicken, and you scoop them up. And meanwhile, you're fishing, you know, trying to catch whatever you can off the shore or the bridge or wherever you're fishing. So, yeah, and then they'd make all these. My grandmother was an amazing cook. She knew a lot of traditional dishes. So, yeah, we were eating a lot of fish, a lot of seafood. And, you know, that's not such a bad thing. But then as I got older and, you know, I started to learn more things about fishing and read books about it. And I would go fishing as I got older and could do it more on my own, and started to appreciate the sport of it as well as the subsistence end of it. But definitely, yeah, growing up, definitely went fishing for our nutrition.
That's I think in a lot of areas that's lost these days. Yeah. It's all about the sport, and for some people, it's just how many pounds are the biggest fish. It's like we're losing touch with the fact that this is a food source, and the ability to go out and catch it yourself, for me, is a huge bonus. that we can go out and catch our own food, don't have to go through a middleman. I mean, it's great having commercial fishermen out there, but like you're talking about in Haines and Skagway, the fact that we can go out and you can go up into the Yukon and get a lake trout or go out and catch some king salmon and, well,
we used to be able
to catch king salmon. We used to be able to. But you know, your halibut and your crab and just the bounty that we have here, like it's easy to dismiss that or not really fully appreciate it.
You're 100% right. I say it all the time when I catch fish. Just always make sure to have that little ritual of being thankful for it. Even say, "Well, thank you, fish," and being grateful that we have it because. If you start looking at it as only a commodity or you start looking at it as something you're entitled to, or I've been on the charter boats up in Alaska too with, the tourists that are just trying to put as many pounds as they can into, freezer bags so that they can fly it back home where it's probably going to spoil in the fridge, I mean, you see guys flying out of Sitka with, 300 pounds of fish. And, they're not going to eat that much fish. That's more than I can eat in a year,
Oh, going to the Juneau airport and you see the stacks of 50-pound fish boxes, and it's like either they've got a whole lot of friends, they're going to have a huge barbecue, or the majority of that's going to get thrown away because it's going to spoil before they eat it.
Yeah, and that's too bad. It's Alaska. It's kind of a mixed bag with the resources in Alaska. You see the damage to the king salmon fisheries, and especially in Skagway. One of my favorite fish in the ocean is a fresh caught feeder king. I mean, I don't think there's arguably 2 or 3 fish in the ocean that compare to it, and it's been well over a decade since we've been allowed to keep one in Skagway. You look at what trawlers are doing. You look, so you live in Alaska. You're paying taxes in Alaska. You're involved in your community, and you're not allowed to go get one fish for the whole summer, not one. And that doesn't sit well with me. I don't talk about it a lot because it probably get me fired up. But
is there what would be the downside of getting fired up other than probably just ulcers and heartburn from?
Well, because it's kind of a hopeless situation, right?
It is.
You look at what's happened with trawlers. I mean, I don't think you can talk to any sportsman, which makes up the vast majority of people in Alaska, who are going to be pro-trawling. Yet it doesn't seem like we really have any say in it.
Yeah. And
the elected officials certainly don't carry it as something they want to fix. So who's on your side? It's instead of expending energy into something that seems futile, it makes more sense to me to focus it somewhere where it can be useful.
Yeah, it's hard though. It's hard for me because growing up in the sporting goods business with watching the amount of and participating in it and seeing the bounty that used to be there and seeing what's out there now, it's hard.
It is. And conversely, I've been fishing in the Yukon. One of the reasons I moved to Skagway when I was traveling and looking for a place to live and had come to Skagway, I chose Skagway over Sitka, which I love Sitka, right? Mm-hmm. And I chose it because Sitka, you're there. You're fishing, whatever streams you can access by boat or Stargavin Creek, or you could go offshore and fish some ocean with a good enough boat. But that's it. But in Skagway, you had those opportunities back then. There was good saltwater fishing. You could limit out 4 king limit, right? You could limit out. But more importantly, you had all this access to this unspoiled wilderness with the road system, which Haines has too, Mm-hmm. So, I in all the 30 years I've been up here, I think the fishing up there has gotten better, which is like a testament to how they manage their fisheries. And, some of the things at first seemed kind of silly, like barbless hooks for all the protected waters.
Yeah.
But then you realize, well, you're releasing an inverted slot fish, and those are the fish that are, propagating the species. Lake trout only spawn once every 2 years. So I catch more fish now than I did back then. I catch bigger fish than I did back then. And, always try to respect the resource, not doing a lot of catch and release unless you have to release, and try and treat it responsibly. Most of the people I've met in the Yukon treat their fishery that way as well, Meanwhile, halibut fishery seems like it's not doing so well in Alaska. The king salmon fishery is definitely not doing well. So that has to fall on management. And I certainly don't want to be critical of fish and game. It's a very large bureaucracy, but if it's not working, it probably should be changed.
Definitely needs a deeper dive.
Yeah, or less
Because
money.
that's one of the things Alaska kind of has always put this forward, that they've managed their fisheries better than anybody else. I don't think the evidence is there now to still sustain that argument.
Oh, it's definitely not.
It's not there.
You know, this is a great example. So when I was in my teenage years, moving into adulthood, just before coming to Alaska, this took a number of years. There was a very strong push in Tampa and the entire Gulf Coast to restrict commercial netting up to 3 miles offshore, because it was allowed inshore. Mm-hmm. And so they'd come in and get, the big schools of, bait fish, whatever they were, greenbacks. And they would also, in bycatch, was impacting all of these other fish populations, right? And so they went through this very long, drawn-out process. And the magazine there, which is like the equivalent of Fish Alaska magazine here, was called Florida Sportsman. And they were very, sportsmen, and so they were strong advocates of, responsible harvesting, and they were politically motivated to get involved in that fight against, the commercial fishery that we're trying to protect from having that restriction on that 3 mile limit. Well, eventually it came to a public vote. This is right before I came up here, and it passed. And there were, what they did in Florida was they paid the commercial fishermen X amount of dollars to turn in nets if they didn't want to do that anymore. And there were other factors that I don't remember. This was a long time ago. Bottom line is, they were able to successfully lobby and politically get this change made. Within a year, they saw fish moving back in these huge quantities. The water quality got better. The large predatory fish followed them, and they started monitoring fish behaviors that they didn't even know ever existed, because there had been those nets there so long that these fish that have these behaviors hadn't exhibited them because they'd never seen them in shallow water, for example. Yeah. And now, like the fishery there, this was, over 30 years ago, the fishery along the west coast of Florida, especially inshore fishing, is exceptional, right? It's exceptional. Mm-hmm. The redfish came back, snook came back. They have more strict regulations now. Pompano, all the different fish you catch in there. So when you go, it is a very healthy, strong fishery. The problems they run into there now is pollutants are causing more red tides. And so, that's commercial overdevelopment, or whatever, fertilizers, whatever it might be. But, Alaska, if you're looking at it from a proactive standpoint, you say, well, you start with the trawlers, but you have to look at it holistically. And, what is the impact from other commercial fishermen? What is the impact from the lodges? I've seen, like, the restrictions as they've gotten tighter. And so the lodges can't put a bunch of king salmon into a box, and they can't put as much halibut into a box. Now there's a lot of focus on rockfish and lingcod, and that is not something I'm fond of. And that, because those fisheries will take a lot longer to rebound, and give it 5-10 years, and those fisheries will collapse.
Have you read the book King of Fish?
No.
A customer gave it to me to read while he was here fishing, and it's about salmon, and it's the history of salmon management going back to like feudal England and Scandinavia, and it was really interesting because they were talking about with salmon, coming every 4 years, coming every 2 years. The only time that they had sustained salmon runs for centuries was in feudal England, because the king owned the water and everything in the water. And so nobody was allowed to fish until they had their escapement in the river. So until they got a certain number into the river, nobody was allowed to touch the fish.
That's smart.
But as soon as that went away, their runs were decimated, and everybody along the way and the other part of it too is so much of Eastern U.S., Eastern Canada, Western U.S., Western Canada, flood control. We want to have houses right along the river, so we straighten out the rivers instead of being windy, take a lot of the boulders out. Things like that end up taking away habitat, makes it harder for the fish to go up. But the author's premise, it was about 15 years ago that I read it, was pretty much allow the rivers their natural courses. Stop trying to change the rivers. And if wait until before you're commercially harvesting a species, make sure you have enough escapement in the river beforehand. Well, then open it up. And I was like, eh. But you look at the way all of our fisheries are, like you're talking about trawlers, they're getting it way before anything gets close to the river.
Right. Well,
long ways away.
All of nature it's a game of balance, right? I mean, it all is, and you especially see that up here. that balance is predicated on these cycles and how regular they are. And when one gets a little bit out of whack, it's going to go the other direction,
Yep.
right? So, it's like if you have, if you had a sink with 2 goldfish in it, and you wake up one morning and there's 4 goldfish in it, and you wake up another morning and there's 20 goldfish in it, you wake up another morning, there's 30 goldfish, and then for a couple of weeks there's 30 goldfish, and you go, well, gee, I could sell a few of these goldfish, I could start a business on it, right?
Yep.
I can make a living. And so you sell 5 here, you sell 10 there, and then a couple months later they replenish. And as long as you do that, you can have a business. Somebody comes into your house overnight and steals all your goldfish, then nobody has anything.
Yep.
And that's, I use that as an example for, what trawlers do. It's also a good reason to keep your fishing hole secret. But but if you lose that balance and the resource is wiped out, they're not going to magically appear again. It's gone forever.
Yep.
And, I use the example of it as a business. That's what management really is in our culture because, these fish are commodities. And so you have commercial entities that are making money on them, and that's fine. But if they aren't managed properly, everybody's going to lose. And as a resident, if I can't literally put my boat into my backyard, it takes me less than 3 minutes to drive down to the boat ramp in Skagway, I'm not allowed to keep any fish. None. Because the only thing we really catch there is king salmon. And you can catch them year-round, and there's a keeper size.
Yep.
But no, I'm not allowed to have any, even though, I'm a taxpayer in Skagway, Alaska, and a longtime resident, former mayor, and had multiple businesses. And that already screams imbalance. So it also screams that the reason that imbalance exists is because, those companies have far more lobbying power than
Yes.
some guy. As we both know who served as small town mayors,
Yeah.
we never had any power. People with the power are the lobbyists who work for the companies.
With the most money.
That's a fact.
Yep. Nobody can deny that one.
And if we don't have their backing, as small communities, we don't get what we want.
So let's backtrack from fish for a little bit.
Sure.
So you grew up delivering bread, fishing, things like that. Out of high school, did you go to college? Did you just skip that? And
I did not. Part of my religious upbringing was we were always told that the end of the world was coming, Armageddon was right around the corner, and so we weren't supposed to go to college. So I was doing like door-to-door proselytizing, became on track to be the equivalent of like a minister. I was giving sermons in front of thousands of people as a 17, 18-year-old. So
so that had to have helped you with your future career as mayor and also as selling tour excursions down on the dock.
absolutely. And I'm grateful for that. I don't have any animosity for any of the strange things or unusual things that endured as a child and a young adult. But yeah, we've got extensive, what I would call very good training in being able to talk to people. I mean, if you have to go knock on a stranger's door who may or may not be in a good mood and then try to convince them that everything they know about the world is wrong and that you're right and that if they don't listen to you that they're going to die in the very near future, that's a tough sell.
And you're doing that at 17 years old?
I was doing that at 4 years old.
4 years old.
I started doing it by myself, going to the doors by 8.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's from the time you're born, you're going and doing it. That's part of the deal.
Yeah, that pretty much gets you into a mode that you can talk to anybody at any time after you've done that.
You have to. And yeah, when you've dodged a few punches and a few swinging rakes and, you get quick on your feet too. People get very sensitive about their religious beliefs, right?
Yeah. Wow. 4 years old starting to do that.
Yeah. And pretty good at it too. So, you get the training, so you get good at talking and good at reasoning, as they would say. I would say that gives you good, maybe some good sales posture. But also, I think the dark side of that is it's the training teaches you maybe to be a little bit manipulative. So that's something good to look out for. And I think you see that in a lot of religions, where, hey, it always said, it seems like God's almost like a mafia guy. He's like, well, you got to give you free will. You can do whatever you want, right? You can do whatever you want. But if you don't do this, you're going to get whacked. Right?
Yes.
So, part of breaking away from that as a young adult was, starting to see it in maybe a different light, right? And I certainly don't begrudge anybody for whatever religious beliefs they have. That's the freedom we have to worship whatever way we want. And I'm not an atheist, you know, I never became an atheist. But, you know, there's certain places I didn't want to go anymore in my religious beliefs.
So, that's interesting because a couple people I'm hoping to talk to later on this, I want to delve into the religious aspect a lot more. And that wasn't something I thought I'd talk to you, but if you don't mind going down this road, because this
Absolutely, yeah.
this is something for me that it's always been. I've always had the belief in God. I feel like I'm a Christian, but organized religion has always been a struggling point for me, and I think part of it is because it's people, right? We're learning about God, but the people that are teaching us and are supposed to be, they're also human like us, that are sinners. They're imperfect. But the human aspect of religion, I think, is the part that is hard for me to just understand all of it, because there are so many imperfect messengers in religion.
I mean, it's a big, you know, a big topic to unpack. You know, I mean, my perspective on it is, I think there's people who have beliefs in God, or we call them spiritual beliefs, and you know that's how they perceive the universe around them. You know, and that's how they interpret it, right? I mean, I'm talking from my own experience at least, but and I think that there's a couple issues for some people with organized religion. You know, I think one of those issues is the one you're talking about, where you're going through a gatekeeper. And so you may have a perception of whatever higher being, you know, you believe in or choose to worship, and your perspective is this. Use a dumb example. In your mind, they have black hair. And then there's this person that's like, and I used to be that person knocking at your door, and they say, well, God doesn't have black hair. God has blonde hair. And, you know, it doesn't mix with what you know. But then the positives of being in a religion are you have this, you know, really great support system. It brings a lot of people of different backgrounds or the same background together under one roof. That support system can be huge. I know, you know, I saw it, you know, growing up, where people had hard times. We sometimes, even as, you know, as poor as we were, if we caught extra fish, we had a really good fishing day. There were people who had it a lot worse than us in the congregation. We'd take them fish. Sometimes we'd give them all the fish, right? So I think there's a lot of value in that, and so I think religion can be good. I also think it doesn't fit with certain people because they don't want to be part of that group. They don't want to be part of groups. You know,
Yeah.
I fall into that category.
Yeah.
And you know, some people, you know, may not be religious, but they like other groups. They love, you know, the New York Giants, and they go to all the games, and they're in that one. And you know, sports and religion have a lot in common, right? Or you're in the Sportsmen's Association, and you find, you know, like good camaraderie there. So I think, you know, people get it from different places. Religion's tough for me too, and for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. My perception of the universe and of higher powers has changed wildly since I was young, and continues to evolve and change. So I like that, because when it comes right down to it, nobody knows.
Yep.
Nobody has any messages coming back from the dead to tell you what happened. So until that happens, you know, everybody should be happy doing the best they can. So we're lucky we live in a place where we have that freedom to worship the way we want to. Grateful for that too, because you know, there are known people that didn't have that. You know, that's got to be awful. But sometimes people don't like it when you're not religious, though. There is that.
It goes both ways. You can get hit that you're not religious enough, or that you're too religious, and you know, just not being able. A lot of people just, not just with religion, but being able to respect somebody else's life decisions, that they have the information that they have. They're making a decision that's best for their life at that moment in time, in a number of topics, and the lack of grace and understanding, I think, that a lot of people have. And there's times I'm right with them, because you're making an assumption based on partial knowledge.
That's right. You know, you want to hear a heresy? You know, a heresy for your podcast? There's not a tactful way to say this. I believe we have a real God, no matter what religion you are. that really rules the world today, and that is the almighty dollar. Money is our God.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's the same God for a Catholic and a Protestant and a Muslim. It's the same God. And I say that, and I can prove it. Because the thing that's most sacred to you is the thing you don't talk about. It's the thing you keep most private, right? Most sacred things to you. And that used to be, I think people were that way with religion, at least from my father's generation and when I was young. That's why it was so unusual to go to people's stores, because it was a very private thing for people, their religion, And so they didn't talk about it. But people talk about it. Look, we're talking about it right now. Nowadays, people talk about it. People didn't used to talk about their politics. And my dad and grandfather's generation, that was always like a very
religion and politics
thing.
are those things at dinner. If you're having dinner, do not talk religion and politics,
Especially Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So, but people obviously has become, it's everywhere now. We're oversaturated with it. But what's the one thing people still don't talk about? Their money.
Yep.
Because that's the God. So I don't say that to be derogatory or to try and be a heretic, but I think it's worth some self-reflection for everybody. We're talking about issues of subsistence and why fisheries are depleted. Well, I think
there's a dollar value to them.
If that's the God, that might be the one you want to make an appeal to, because got to appeal to people's sense of self-control. And the lust for wealth doesn't lend itself towards self-control.
No, it does not.
Because that is a God that always wants more.
Yes.
So that's me proselytizing a bit.
All right. So from going door to door, street preaching, 17, 18, what were there any steps between that and moving to Skagway, or what what was that?
So, I got out of the religion I was raised in, but I had my own business at 19. I started doing my dad's business, which at that point was doing, antique restoration, furniture repair. And I was doing that, and had a very successful business at a young age. Obviously, coming from a really religious background, we weren't drinkers or drug users or anything like that, so had a good work ethic. And not going to college, also had bills to pay. So started expanding the business. It was doing really well. And then about the time I was 22, 23, I started having cluster headaches, which are kind of like migraines, but different. And they come in clusters. And then I went into a chronic phase. And it became debilitating. Eventually, I didn't know what was going on with me. And I'd gone to a number of doctors, and they thought it was psychological. And so they were putting me on psych meds, and that wasn't doing anything because I didn't have psychological problem. So eventually I was doing, this is an interesting story. There was the woman who was the #1 weather person in Tampa. Her name was Laura York, and she was on the Channel 8 News. And I was doing a furniture job for her, and I was going through a cluster headache when I was delivering the furniture, and she was like, "What is wrong?" She goes, "She could tell something was wrong." And I told her, she goes, "You need to see a neurologist." And she gave me a recommendation for a neurologist. And I went to see the neurologist, and he was like, "Well," he says, "you have cluster headaches." He goes, "And if you have two options." He goes, it's the neurological damage is because of the exposure to the chemicals you're using for the furniture. And he said, you can either get out of that line of work, and he goes, the headaches won't go away right away, but they will get better. And then over time, they'll get better and better and better. But, probably never go away completely. But the other option is within a year, you'll be dead. So I had to get out of the business.
So you chose option A.
I chose option A.
Yeah.
I chose life.
Yeah, good choice.
So, I'm bouncing around from jobs, struggling to pay rent, struggling to pay bills, because I went from making a decent living to really not making anything. I was delivering newspapers. I was working in restaurants, and really not enjoying my life anymore. And still dealing with the cluster headaches, although, boy, that's the only doctor I've ever been to who was 100% right.
Yeah.
I rarely get a cluster headache now, maybe once or twice a year. But, for those first years coming out of it, I still got them pretty frequently, just not in a chronic phase. So it was 1996, and I had some friends who were college students. I was living in South Tampa, and they were going to an art gallery opening, and Evel Knievel was supposed to be there, and I'm like,
Oh,
I'm there. I'm like, let's go.
Art and Evel Knievel. How can you lose with that?
Yeah, you get to win-win. I had the Evel Knievel motorcycle when I was a kid.
Yeah,
right? You pull a thing
of course.
and do the jumps. That was
I think
the
we
best.
all did.
I wish I still had it. It would probably bring a lot of joy to my life. But so it was free. There's people are going to be there, and I go there, and I was talking to this woman who was there, and I was just sharing stories, and I was kind of giving her my sob story. And then we started talking about Alaska, and I was like, man, ever since I was a kid, I always dreamed of going to Alaska. And she goes, well, I brought it up because I'm going to Alaska in 2 weeks. I'm going up there to Skagway, Alaska. I never heard of it. And she's like, I got a job there. And, she goes, you want to go? And I said, yeah, I do. And so in the next 2 weeks, I got rid of all of my stuff, gave most of it away. I had kept some fishing gear. And I got the clothes on my back, and 2 weeks later we drove to Skagway, Alaska. Yeah. In April, we left in April of 1996 and got to Skagway on May 5th. So it took 6 days. 6 days we drove. 4,700 miles.
So that was the first time you met this woman, was at this art gallery, art deal?
First time.
Then 2 weeks later you're driving to Skagway, Alaska.
Yep. And she got me a job. So she had a job at the Westmark, and she got me a job there. And I made it about 2 weeks at the Westmark, and corporate life has never been real well with me. It wasn't a bad job. It just wasn't a good fit. And so I got a job working at the Klondike Picture Emporium, which they did 1 hour photos and photo developing back when you got photos developed from film. And I loved that job, making $8 an hour, right?
Yeah.
And saved up enough money to travel over the next winter. Did that for a few years before, just permanently settling in Skagway. But I traveled in the off season. I'd travel all around. I had a van. I'd travel all around and camp at all the different national parks, maybe 3 weeks here, maybe a month there. And so I got to see the whole country. And I was like, well, I'm going to find a place I want to live. And because I don't want to live in Tampa anymore. The great thing about Alaska, you have all this built up in your head about what it's going to be. And I had this book, and I'd had it. It was called Alaska Science Nuggets. And it was written in the 70s, and it told you about the northern lights and about different fish and all these science facts about. And I'd read it probably 10 times, And you come to Alaska after all this build up and hype, and it's 100 times better than the hype. And there ain't nothing in life like that.
See, I don't understand that.
Right.
Because I was born here. I mean, you just grow up with it. It's normal.
Yeah.
That you take it you take it for granted.
A
lot of times.
So. And I try to remind myself all the time, never take this for granted.
Yeah.
And it's I'm always just every year I see things and experience things that just blow my mind. Always lives up to the billing. Alaska is just I don't even know how to put it into words, and I'm a writer. I try to all the time and always fall short.
I appreciate it when I have friends and family come from out of town and show them around and see the things that they're excited about. Because it renews that feeling that this is a really special place.
You know what blew my mind here? So I had gone when I was 17. We went on a family vacation to Yosemite, and it was the first time I'd traveled out west. And I went to Yosemite, and I remember thinking, wow, everything is so huge. Like the scale is so massive, and you're looking at that Half Dome and all these different mountains, and it just blew my mind, So then in 96, I come to Alaska, and I kept thinking about it all the time. I didn't understand the scale. I couldn't wrap my head around the scale. In fact, I would say it probably took me about a decade to start wrapping my head around the scale. Coming from a place that was flat, I didn't understand the distances to things or the size of things or the depth of things. And it wasn't that winter, but it was 2 winters later, so it would have been in 98. That winter, traveled down through California and actually went to Yosemite. About 10, 11 years after I'd been there as a teenager. And it looks so small. It looks so small. And I had really built it up to the person I was traveling with at that time. I was like, it's just so huge. It's so much like Alaska. It's nothing like Alaska.
Nothing like Alaska.
Nothing like it. I'm fishing. I was talking about the marvels of this place. I was fishing here. This was a few weeks ago. I'm up in the Yukon, and it's a spot I go to this time of year, and there's always just a trout fishing's phenomenal, and it's easy to you catch a lot of slot fish too, so you got to release a number of fish, but a lot of big fish, a lot of 10, 12, 15 pound fish before you can get a couple of keepers. And so I had left it. I'd caught my 2 keepers, and so I left it alone, and went over and tried a couple other places, and just to see what was out there. And then I saw grayling in this spot with this little creek coming out. I'm like, I'm going to get a couple grayling for dinner. And as I'm pulling the boat up, the creek comes out, and there's probably about 8-10 feet of shoreline where it drops to maybe 6-7 feet, and then it drops to 120 feet. And it just drops straight down, and then it keeps going down to 220. And you're still, probably only 50, 60 yards from shore. It gets really deep really fast. Mm-hmm. But as I'm coming up on that ledge, there are trout, and they are all evenly spaced apart. All of them are about 10 to 20 pounds, huge trout. They're probably about 3 to 4 feet apart, and they are all facing the creek mouth, radiating out and down into the depths as far as you can see, hundreds. And they're all facing the same way, like aliens waiting for the mothership.
There's food coming out of somewhere.
I tried to whip out my phone to get a picture, and when the boat came, it spooked them, and they started to disperse.
Yeah.
What? What is that? You ever heard of anything like that?
Never heard of that.
If I had to see it with my own eyes, I'd be like, well, that's an exaggeration. But no, they're all just laying there. I'm like, well, no wonder the fishing's so good there.
Yeah. Because
there's got to be 1,000 of them down there. And no one will ever know where that spot's at.
Somebody's going to put an air tag on your tackle box and find out where Andrew's going fishing.
So 30 years up here, you're still seeing things that just blow your mind, right? Mm-hmm. Always lives up to the building.
Yeah. Even in that the everyday things, it's easy to kind of just like, whatever. But like you said, you driving different places, there's the Northern Lights a while back. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Ooh. When you get those moments, it's this is a special place.
Yeah, place. It just keeps blowing my mind. Yeah. And maybe some of that is coming from Florida, but you see some amazing things in Florida too. I hate to sell Tampa short because it does. You're on the water there; it is pretty special there too. Yeah. But I don't know, something about it. I always feel, it sounds kind of foo-foo, but I always feel like the North was calling out to me, and I just had to go, right? And then it just all kind of worked out in this bizarre way.
So you start off doing photo processing.
Yeah.
When did the writing come in?
So there was a friend of mine in Skagway who was running a charter business. This was in 2001, and so I had started the way the writing really started was in '99. In '99, I was like living in Skagway now for a few years, at least during the summer, right? So I went to Jeff Brady, who was the editor of the newspaper back then, and I was like, man, we're living up here. You got this newspaper. There's all these fish I'm catching. Why isn't there like anything about like catching fish in the newspaper, like that tells you like updates on how the fishing is and stuff, like you're doing now on Facebook? I love it. And he was like, if you want to fish an article, you write it. And I was like, okay. So I didn't have a computer or anything, so I got my notebook out and I hand wrote a article. I forget what the first one was about. It was about grayling maybe. And I took it to him, and he read it, and he was like, "Hey, that actually is pretty good." He goes, "You want to write one for every month, once a month? I'll pay you, $40, whatever, to write it, include a photo with it, And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So that first year I was writing, I just wrote these stories, and I would give them to him, and so he was publishing in the paper, and people were enjoying it. I got a lot of really positive feedback. I enjoyed writing in school. I never thought I'd be doing it, So in 2001, I had a friend who was a charter fisherman, and this was back in the early days, before Google and Yahoo was around, and business owners were starting to learn you could have a website, but if you didn't rank on the search engines, then people couldn't find your business. And so this is where search engine optimization kind of in the early days. So he was working with a web designer in Washington, Seattle, and this web designer was like, find somebody local to write your content for your web page, and then we can optimize it, and the search engines and all that. And so he reached out to me, and I didn't know him too well, and he was like, "Hey, I like your fishing articles. Would you be willing to write this for me? I'll pay you, $100 to write this page." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll write it for you." And so I wrote the page for him for his website, and I gave it to him, and he contacts me a couple weeks later. He goes, "Hey, the guy in Washington who is he's this web designer. He wants to hire you to do some work. He loved the writing from the story, and he wants to hire you to do other work. He does this for a lot of different people, like down in Washington and some other places in Alaska." And so I reached out to him, and he just retired like 2 weeks ago. And we've been working together ever since.
Ever since.
And so through him, started blossoming through like doing that kind of writing and making money, right? Which is always good because, I got bills. And so then in 2007, Buckwheat, it was when he was doing his walk around the United States, if you remember the tourism director,
Yep.
Buckwheat in Skagway. So we had another tourism director there for an interim, and she reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, you should do a submission for Fish Alaska magazine, because they'll take submissions, And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that." So I wrote an article as a submission for Fish Alaska magazine and sent it in, and they published it. And then the editor reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, how would you like to be a writer for us? And, we'll send you out on assignments and stuff." And I was like, it's like, I didn't want to say it. It's like a dream come true. Are you kidding me? Sign me up.
Wait, could you say that again just so I can record this to make sure you're not joking with me?
Yeah, that's right. So, they're paying you to go send you to all over Alaska to do like fishing in remote places and lodges and saltwater and all this. And so I did that for a year, and then he contacted me again. He's like, "You want to be a contributing editor so you can do editorial content?" And so I've been a contributing editor for them for getting on 18, 19 years now.
Nice.
So that's been just absolutely wonderful. And then in the meantime, wrote a book and had a column. I kept doing the column in the newspaper. In fact, this is the first year I didn't do the column because the newspapers had a bunch of issues. And writing for other magazines and stuff like that. I always call that the fun writing. There's the writing that pays the bills. It's less fun. But what's really cool about website work is that, whatever client I'm working with, which is usually a web designer, they'll say, "Well, there's this carpenter in Arizona, you're contacting him. There's a painter, there's a lawyer there." I've met and talked to and interviewed people from just about any business you can think of all over the country, from contractors to software developers to the guy who invented the first successful treatment for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Like all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's been one of the really cool parts of that job,
That's what I think is one of the cool parts of being in retail.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Is the people you meet. Good and bad. There's some crazy people, but there's some really cool people from all walks of life and all over the place.
Well, you're in a sports shop, too.
Yeah, it's there. You kind of have similar likes and stuff for people that come in here. But, yeah, just meeting different people, that's one of the coolest parts of being in this job.
I bet you get a lot of superstition in the sporting goods store, too.
There can be, yes. Yes,
a lot of fishermen are all a superstitious lot.
Yes, they are. Yeah. No, that's interesting that you get to meet. Yeah.
It's been great.
Everybody wants a website, right?
Well, they have to have one.
They pretty much have to have one, and so you're going to be meeting people from all over the place.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating work. And now with AI, starting to become more and more dominant within that industry, it's changing again. It's always changing, and the way you approach the writing is different. So fell into it.
All right. So
like a lot of things in life.
So from falling into writing, how did that lead to running for mayor?
So, I never had any designs on getting into politics, but I always believe in community service. I always thought that was important, and so I've tried to always be involved in community service in Skagway. 25-year Elks member. I immediately got involved at the Elks as an officer and volunteering. I was on the Tie Inlet Watershed Council and did, I ran a fishing derby in Skagway for 8 of its 10 years and founded it. So that it was a fundraiser for the Pullen Restoration Project, which now you go to Pullen and you kind of take it for granted.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that long ago that it was a heap of for garbage and bicycles, just a bunch of garbage in there. It's so much nicer now. And it's created habitat for, the fish that do go in there and the other wildlife. So I was always involved in community service. It's important. I think it's rewarding too, And in a place like Skagway, you're afforded the opportunity to be involved without it being a hassle where you got to drive 3 hours to get somewhere to do it, right? So, we were moving toward the end of the White Pass lease in Skagway, and we had a really good mayor, Monica Carlson, who in 2018 was killed in like a tragic accident in D.C. So, I told Brittany, my wife, I was like, gee, I'm like, I hope, all the things she was working for continues, because I felt it was really important for Skagway to, move beyond that lease, because, for the main reason, Skagway was getting a raw deal on it. I think in the early days of that lease, it was a good deal for Skagway, and I think that's the problem with 55-year leases, right? $187,000 in 1955 or 1963 is very different than that same amount of money in 2001. So, I had talked to Brittany. I'm like, they were having a special election. And I'm like, man, if nobody runs, somebody's got to step up. Somebody's got to step up. And so, I had those concerns motivated me to run. But there were other factors. I never think there's one thing that makes you do something, right? There's other factors. And so there were other reasons that I thought it was important to run, but that was the primary one. And I was running against somebody with a long history in politics in Skagway. He was a very successful person, a very nice person too. So I really didn't think there was a chance in hell I was going to win. And it was very, very close. I put a lot of effort into the campaign, and I thought it was very important to me, and squeaked by, and then downloaded the book How to Be a Small Town Alaska Mayor. I had no idea. And then that's how I got involved in politics, and I was lucky.
So that was 2009, fall of 2019 you got elected?
It was the winter of 2019. I was sworn in, I think it was late February or early March. Okay. So they had that special election. Yeah. So I served out the remainder of that term and then ran for 2 more terms until, Skagway had fully taken over the port, was, 80% of the way through with the ore dock project. And right, we had a pandemic and rock slides, and and you were dealing with the tragedies here in Haines, and there was a lot going on.
So, being mayor, you hadn't been mayor that long before the pandemic hits. You got a year into it.
Right.
Pandemic starts, changes Skagway's economy tremendously right off the bat because very tourism oriented. No cruise ships coming for 2020. That was huge challenge for you guys.
It was.
I mean, it was a huge challenge for everybody.
But it was especially for us.
For Skagway, when your economy is getting people from other parts of the world to come and visit you in the summertime, that's the main factor. You did have ore shipments coming through, but that was a much smaller part compared to the tourism industry.
Yeah, we lost 97% of our economy, and with no hope in sight for a lot of that, right?
You had no idea when it was coming back.
No idea. And, I had my own, early on, I remember going to the manager, Brad, and, because I would put the start date at March 6th, because that was the start date. And I remember going to him before the end of March, and I told him, we're not getting cruise ships. I was like, but I think it would be a bad idea to say that publicly, because A, it could be wrong, but B, you don't want to be negative, especially in a leadership role, right? You want to stay positive. I said, but we need to start gearing up for not having any revenue here for the foreseeable future, definitely for this season and possibly beyond that. And I'm very lucky to have, a responsible manager. Brad was great during that time. So were the other elected officials. I would say the entire assembly and all the community was very engaged. And, the goal was, I remember early on, I was like, are we going to get fuel? Are we going to have food coming up? How many reserves do we have if we don't have those things coming up? And these are the kind of questions we were trying to answer. We have you were probably on a lot of those early on, like the Wednesday meetings with the White House.
Nope, I didn't
Oh,
get.
you weren't.
I
That's
didn't.
right. You weren't
I,
quite there yet.
I was a year. It was fall of 2020 that I became mayor. But dealing with in retail with groceries, we're trying to figure out what our supply chain was looking like. All of a sudden, you can't get any toilet paper or paper towels. I still can't figure out why we ran out of those. But people were stockpiling, and then the nervousness of, do people want to come into the store or not?
Right.
So trying to figure out can we deliver? Can we just have it out? Can we have people deliver? What does that all figure out? But yeah, it was a daily battle on trying to figure out what kind of food you were going to have coming up the next week.
Yeah, I know. I'd gone to like AT&T, the power company. I'd gone to Petro, the fuel company. I'd be like, "Are we in trouble? Like, where are we at?" So it was a lot of that early on, and so I took the perspective early on. When I had been down, it's an interesting turn of events because I had gone down to, for SCRP training basically down in Sitka with the police chief at the time. And SCRP is, Small Community Emergency Response Plan. And so we were getting training on what to do in an emergency. And Zink, remember her? She was the state,
Yep.
she's great. She comes on the last day of the conference and she's like telling everybody this pandemic thing is could really blow up, the coronavirus, as everybody was calling it then. And, you need to be prepared to activate your SCRP. If it indeed happens. And the fellow I was traveling down there with, he was very skeptical about all of it. And then next day we get back into town and we get the call from the White House. And, we go in there on this conference call with all the communities and we're shutting down everything. And the manager had just gone to Mexico on vacation. I was able to contact him and he good for him and us, he came back immediately. But, I went home that day and I was like, this is going to be a difficult time and I need to really keep my focus, So, I had a strict regimen. I wouldn't touch any alcohol. I was, making sure I did meditation every morning, trying to, stay calm. And I was also, we need to be really good at communicating with the community. So tried to take it on myself to, try to openly communicate, via social media as much as possible. And I know that was appreciated because a lot of people commented on it, but, we just got to roll with the punches. It's interesting in the early part, we'd get on these White House, where every Wednesday, and it was with all the mayors in the United States. And so the first call, there was like 3,000 on it. The second one, 2,000. By the fifth one, there was like 400, because it was mostly Navarro and those other boneheads jabbering at you about stuff. But, they were very much 100%, this is happening and this is what you need to do. And we're working on a vaccine and all this stuff. I'd listen to the meetings. They took about an hour and go my merry way. And so it was like the fifth or sixth meeting. And they're like, we're going to have a special guest at the end of this one, so be sure and stay on for the whole thing. And I was like, I wonder who that could be. And sure enough, at the end of it, it was, you are the mayors of America. You are the most beautiful mayors. We're this terrible disease. We're working on a vaccine. I'm even doing the gesture.
Yeah.
And we're going to conquer it. And you're the mayors of America. The mayors of America, so beautiful. You're the frontline soldiers. You're fighting along with us so that we can get past it. And I was like, okay. That was the last one I listened to. And that night, because at the time I was watching any news I could, like at night, so I would watch CNN, I'd watch Fox News. And that night was the first night. It was about 6 weeks into it, in April, where the news is diverged.
Yep.
And I heard they were interviewing the president, and he said, it's a Democrat hoax, and anybody who says that this is real, it's not. This was something that's Democrats. It's not a real thing. This is literally the night of when he had said we were the front lines.
Yeah.
And then Fox News reported the exact same stuff the next day. And I went into Brad's office, and I said in more colorful language, I said, we're screwed. I said, we got thrown under the proverbial bus because out of one corner of the mouth, we're the front line, and we just got sent to the enemy because now we are the enemy, right? So we were lucky to be in Skagway where we didn't have to deal with too much of that aggression that was manufactured by turning that into a political thing. And regardless of anybody's opinion about whether COVID was as dangerous and required a shutdown, that goes way beyond my pay grade. We just did what we were told to do on their phone calls with the White House, right? Until that became more and more untenable as the politics of it took over. But, I don't doubt a lot of people know that, right?
That was the hardest thing from being not in those meetings, just being in the community.
Right.
Of and the frustrating thing for me is at the beginning, we were talking about all the healthcare. Everybody was talking about improve your immune system. We need to improve the immune system. Make sure you're getting your vitamins. Make sure you're getting exercise, eating healthier, eating your fruit and vegetables.
Get outside.
Get outside, exercise, do all these things.
Yeah.
And within 2 months, it was like lockdown, wear a mask, stay away from everybody, stay inside, don't go around anybody. They're locking down beaches down south, stuff like that. And how did that flip so quickly? And I remember being because when the vaccine came out, I was mayor at the time, and when it came out, we're in a meeting talking about pushing the vaccine, and I was like, what happened to the initial part? Where it was this, where did that go wrong? And you guys decided, or whoever in the medical community said, no, let's just wait for a vaccine. I said, that's where I lost a lot of trust in what you guys are telling me. That just, nope, we're just joking about that. And one of the people on there said, well, if we would have had people do that, that would have solved all sorts of health issues. Like, yeah.
Get outside. That's what we were preaching in Skagway. Like, get outside.
Get outside.
If you're in a public space, kindly wear the mask. And if you don't, we never did a shutdown in Skagway other than the government buildings by the attorney recommendation.
Yep.
But if you had a private business, there was no requirement to wear a mask or anything, And it was interesting because in the early days when everybody was kind of on the same page and, the White House was mostly the one disseminating the information to us, everybody was cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was getting along. It was no big deal. And then I'm not going to just pick on one side either. The other side went extreme the other way. Like, you're not, you need to wear a mask when you're in your car by yourself or whatever, and trying to legislate that. And, I just trying to walk the middle ground and just take care of my health, make sure I was getting outside. But once it became a wedge issue and was politicized, it was really eye-opening to me how easily people are manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
Because depending on the news they were watching, and again, I was watching both, depending on the news they were watching is what they started to believe. And then now, very effective at creating an enemy. And, not to get too political about it, but, that's what people who are in power at those high levels of power are very good at, are driving wedges between regular people, even in small communities. And turn off the news, get off social media, go talk to people who may have differences of opinion when it's possible, unless they're trying to hurt you or take your rights away.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see a lot of that both sides of the aisle. People trying to take your rights away are creating wedges. So,
Well, and I think the frustrating thing for me is watching politics since I was a kid is there's going back to the religion with the dollar. If your comment about the dollar being religion now, groups have found the more vitriolic they can get in their pledge about what the other side is going to do to you, the more money they can raise.
Right.
And so it's not just, I think we should do this. It's, well, if this is what you feel, Andrew's going to try and take that away from you because Andrew is, and whatever derogatory terms they want to take about Andrew, and we need to stop Andrew. We need to stop Andrew in his tracks, or your life as you know it will cease to exist. And it's on both sides of every major issue in the United States right now, and both political parties are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
That the other side is going, if you let them into office, all humanity is going to die. Pretty much is where we're going with some of the comments on it.
Well, the only thing that matters is
So
the money.
No, the money, because they're driving the cycle with all these, with the advertising, with the whatever fundraising they're doing with the media buys, all of that stuff. And then some of these nonprofit organizations, their leadership is getting paid however much, and they've got the big office building and whatever to do that. But it makes it so two people with differing ideas on an issue, to have them come and compromise, it's nearly impossible for that to happen, because they know they're going to get attacked.
Well, and if
you're going to get attacked, both people are going to get attacked by their sides for agreeing with the other one.
And if people start coming together, they'll be out of work.
They'll be out of work. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean that's the story of humanity, though. It's
not
a new thing, right?
But it's not new. But just watching it happen in front of us, and like you were saying, how easy it is. You saw how easy it was for people to get manipulated. How easy it is to see. You can have a conversation with somebody, and you can tell exactly what news source they have.
Oh, absolutely.
You can tell 100% what news channel that they watch.
But, you're talking to most people, like, I try to take people fishing I don't know in Skagway, because I have the opportunity to do that. My dad said something very smart growing up. He says, if you ever want to really get to know somebody, take them fishing.
Take them fishing?
Yeah, you spend a day out in the boat with somebody, you're talking.
Uh-huh.
And, I never really care about their political background, and, you do get some different perspectives. But, the one thing you always come around to when you have a one-on-one conversation, even if you have different political opinions, there's always this compromise that ends up taking place. Like, we're all kind of just guessing anyway, and we're not sure. But all of us are completely dissatisfied with the people in charge. So the idea that we're even given a choice is a myth. Yeah. We're given a choice amongst people who have billions of dollars of backing behind them, and that's the people who are put out there onto the shelf, and you get to choose this one or this one. And you either align with the giant news source that's owned by the multimedia billionaire conglomerate on this side, or the one on this side. It's kind of boring.
Yep.
But you get the one-on-one in the boat, and you know what you got in common? You're struggling to pay bills. You're trying to figure out what lure is working to catch the fish.
Yeah.
You got family issues that you need to deal with. You have personal issues that you're trying to deal with. Great conversations with people in the boat like this. Honest conversations. And when you crack it down, that is what compromise is saying, well, I'm not so dogmatic in my beliefs that I don't understand where you're coming from or why you might have voted the way you did. Mm-hmm. Because you're looking for the same answers I am. We're just looking in a different place. But sometimes the vitriol has gone so hard when people's rights are getting stripped away. And I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. When I see a bunch of people in uniforms hopping out of vans and pulling people into them, I ain't about that, man. I know I'm not about that. So I don't know. I mean, I do know. I worry about my friends in the lower 48. That's what I worry about.
Yeah, I think we're pretty safe where we're at.
Well, we're safe to a point.
To a point.
You're never 100% safe in life, right?
Yeah.
But we're safe to a point. At least, I think there are people. I always feel confident that I have the skills to get by if the fuel truck doesn't make it, or if the medicine stops coming. Mm-hmm. But I'm, blessed with good health, and have developed a skill set that allows me to survive, in a bad situation. But think about that little one thing. Imagine no medication coming up here all of a sudden. Thought about it during the pandemic early on. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. You have diabetes. You need blood pressure medication. You need medication for your heart. How long before people start dropping? Not long.
Well, and that was one of the reasons I was so disappointed with the health system.
Oh, yeah.
Is there was an opportunity there to try to treat. I've got several friends that are nurses, doctors over the years. A lot of them have the same frustration that somebody comes down and the best thing for them is to go for a walk half an hour a day.
Yeah.
But they know they're not going to go for a walk half an hour a day because they just want a pill. We want the easy way. Give us something that'll just give me a shot, give me a pill, have a surgery to fix this, rather than changing our lifestyle or doing any of the work. Well, trying to do it the easiest way.
That's the money, man.
But that's where the money's at. The money isn't having somebody go for a walk for half an hour. The money is giving them a pill to mask the symptoms or treat the symptoms. And so we're addicted to that easy fix. That's where the money is at.
And we're convinced
but we
that's
missed.
what we need.
They had a chance to help people with some of these chronic illnesses, and they didn't take it. But again, they were looking at the money. If they got a vaccine they knew they were going to make a lot of money vaccinating everybody for the coronavirus. Billions of dollars at stake. Having people go walk on their own, $0.
$0. When I was, and this is what year would this be? Probably 93. I was working, still had my shop doing furniture. And the fellow I worked with, we would watch there was like a storage area across from where our shop was at. And every day, a car would pull in the morning, and 2 or 3 beautiful women would get out, all dressed in like professional business attire. And they would go into it was an air-conditioned storage place. They'd go inside. They'd come out with like bags of stuff. They'd get in the car, and they would drive off. And every now and then a guy was with them, a really well-dressed, good-looking guy. Same thing, And we're watching this, like months go by. And, I've never been a shy person, so probably from knocking on doors. So I went up with my buddy, and we go ask the guy. We're like, okay, so what's going on? Like, we got to know, like, what's going on? He goes, and he gave us a clipboard and a pen, and it's got the name of the drug on it. And it was Claritin, because this was back when Claritin was a prescription drug.
Yeah.
And he goes, what we do is we go sell our products, which are drugs. We go to physicians, and we work out arrangements with them so that they get this, basically this swag, so that they can advertise it. And then if they start selling our products, they get a certain percentage for everything they prescribe, right? So if they prescribe Claritin, in this example, they're getting 15% off the top or whatever the prescription is, And he goes, we send, so you notice all the women, we send them, most physicians are men, so we send them to the men, and I, often go see the female physicians, And I'm like, oh, okay. So I've had a healthy distrust for doctors ever since. And, you look at all the problems within the health industry, some of them COVID, it's all about the drug, right? The drug. Whether I got a vaccine and then I got COVID, and so I was like, okay, I didn't have bad symptoms or anything, so I tend maybe to put too much trust in doctors at times, but I have gone to other doctors and gotten, the immediate thing is, well, we want to prescribe you a drug. I don't like taking those kind of drugs, right? I don't want to take Claritin, and I don't want to take, Oxycontin, right? How many people got addicted to all of that? How much money were the doctors making? How much money were drug companies making? Well, again, it's the almighty dollar, baby, right? I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. So it's you go in thinking they're going to solve your health problem, and they're just creating a problem.
Watch TV for half an hour. How many of the ads are for different medications for whatever?
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
So how many times are people looking at TV going, wait a minute, they're self-diagnosing over what the drug's saying it's treating. Do you have this? Well, yeah, I think I do. And so then they're going to go to the doctor and say, hey, I've got all these symptoms. Doctor says, well, we better give you this drug.
Imagine it, because advertising, it impacts that part of the brain that motivates you to want to buy something. And some people are more susceptible than others, but we're all susceptible.
We're all susceptible to it at one level.
There's a reason why, they start showing the train on the TVs while you're waiting in line in Seattle for your cruise.
Yeah.
And so by the time you get up here, you've been bombarded with the imagery. You're going on the train.
You better get on the train.
That's what you got to do. And fortunately, it's a great product. Fortunately. But how many things that are advertised that aren't such great products? It's wild to me that, you can just advertise anything now. The one you see now that's going to be a huge problem, it'll be the next Oxycontin in a couple of years, is sports betting. Oh. Because it's everywhere now, right?
Yeah.
And
I cannot believe that's been allowed to go.
They probably got some really good lobbyists.
They've got some amazing lobbyists.
Yeah. So,
if only we had some money to get them to lobby for us to make sure we have fish for sport fishing.
Well, maybe the communities in Alaska should put their heads together.
Put their heads together and raise a fund.
If only we had the power to actually get candidates elected that would do something for us, and not ones propped up by billionaires and news organizations. Because all that leads to is disappointment. Been really disappointed with our elected officials lately on a federal level, and really for a long time.
So I think you and I have talked about this, about whether serving in Juneau or whatever, and one of the frustrating things for me, looking at it from the outside, the further you go up the food chain, to run a campaign in Skagway, run a campaign in Haines, you can pretty much do it by yourself if you want.
It sucks.
It's
I know my experience. I hated campaigning. I hated it.
I've never done much campaign. I do the forums, and if people want to talk to me, I'm happy to talk to them. But it doesn't. The investment isn't that much.
Right.
But you start going to statewide offices or even regional offices, requires more capital. Not a lot of people have that kind of capital or can stay away from their business long enough to spend the time in Juneau. So there's a sell-off there. So where are those funds coming from? To
Special interest.
Special interest.
Of course. I mean,
and so I know every politician that I know would say that they do not take that into consideration when they're voting. But we all know that if you had somebody that gave you a PAC or whatever, put in $50,000 to get you elected to something, when they say, hey, can we have a meeting, probably going to take the meeting.
No, if
you're going to take the meeting, right?
If an elected official tells you that, yeah, I got $10,000 from this special interest, or on a federal level, millions of dollars from this special interest, and they tell you, but that's not going to influence my judgment. If you believe that, you
there's
got
no way.
Hope.
There's no way.
You got no hope.
That's got to affect somebody. So the further you go up the food chain, the more I look at it as the more compromised the candidate is, because they have, in order to raise those funds to get there, they have so many more special interests or groups that are putting this money into the kitty. So the more people, you just owe more people for where you're at.
Even on a subconscious level, there's a reason why the drug people I was telling you about gave you clipboards. Yeah. Because psychologically, when you're gifted anything, you have a subconscious need to reciprocate.
Yep.
Because that is human nature, and it is hardwired into our programming. So, it's like the oldest sales technique in the book, is to give somebody a gift right at the outset, or buy them a beer. So when I was mayor, I never let anybody buy me a beer. I never would allow it. And for a lot of reasons. But anything, no gifts, none of that, because nobody's immune to that. No. You may understand the psychology of it. You may know that humans are hardwired that way, but you're still a victim to it.
Yeah.
So the fact that somebody's going to sit there and tell you, well, I'm not influenced by it. Well, they're just lying to you at that point, because of course we're all influenced by
Everybody's influenced by that.
I don't know. So how believe it, I guess.
So how do we get representatives at the state level or the federal level that aren't influenced that way? I think what's Andrew's change to that needs to happen?
Well, so this is all just my opinion, so caveat, but I do think on the state level you do have a little bit more power and influence with those officials as a regular citizen, but especially as a community. So, like for us, when Jesse Keel and Andy Story come into Skagway, if you go and bring stuff to them, I was always, and I think if you talk to most people in Skagway, Jesse Keel's been fantastic. Not only has he been helpful for the community, whether you agree with his politics or not, I know numerous individuals he helped during the pandemic when there were all the issues with unemployment. And they would come to me and I'd be like, I can't help with this. This is a state issue. Here's his number. He wanted me to give out his number. So, I can only speak for my state representatives. I can only say good things about him based on the work ethic I know that he has. And I don't know what his contribution history is. So I think if you have people of integrity in these places, then, but you're also talking about, Juneau, Skagway as opposed to Anchorage, where it's a very different animal in Anchorage, right? I think on a federal level, there's absolutely no hope, and I don't say that to be nihilistic or cynic. I'm just stating what I think is a fact. I don't think there's any way around the fact that federal politics in the United States are completely governed by oligarchs at this point, billionaires and corporations, and that level of influence. I don't think people get elected because they have integrity or they care. I think they only get elected because they're already are worshiping at that altar, and there's absolutely nothing that's going to change that. So, I think all systems eventually fail. The Roman Empire eventually fell. Greek Empire fell. The Soviet Union fell. And what happens is organizations and bureaucracies become facsimiles of what they once were, controlled by whatever interests they are controlled by, and they ultimately fail. That's what's happened in the Soviet Union is very similar to what's happening in the United States right now, where people aren't even able to pay bills but people are going to be trillionaires here soon. That's not sustainable. People can't afford homes. It's a bummer, man. I look at people who are, just graduating high school, like in Skagway, or people I know back down south, their kids, my friends of mine, their kids are getting older. Where are they going to buy a house? How are they going to have the same opportunity? Like, I had to work my ass off to afford a house, and I was grateful that somebody in Skagway sold me one, because that's also challenging. Where's the opportunity for them? Like, it seems almost hopeless, because if your wages are stagnant for a 30-year period and everything is going up in price, and eggs are going up and everything's going up, well, what are you going to do? You better be really good at subsistence fishing, right? So I think we're lucky here to a certain degree, like in Skagway and Haines, because we have economies that maybe aren't so locked with the economy that affects most people living in, like urban and rural environments in the lower 48. But eventually the ripple will start to hit us, So I don't know. I don't mean that to sound pessimistic, because I'm not a pessimist, but it seems a bit hopeless.
Have you read the book, The Fair Tax?
No.
It came out a long time ago. I don't know, 20 years ago or whatever. I thought it was interesting at the time. I think it's more interesting now. It was their ideas of eliminate all taxes and just have a national sales tax. No income tax, no withholding off your paycheck, none of that. And at the time that they wrote, it'd be like 23% national sales tax. And so right now, the mining company that gets the minerals pays taxes. The smelter pays taxes. The auto company pays taxes. The freight company pays. Everybody. By the time something gets to your door, it's been taxed multiple times.
Right.
And so this here, it's just like on the end user's the only one that pays taxes. There's no corporate taxes. There's no income tax. None of that. It's all just sales tax. And I know it'll never pass because there's too many special interest groups out there that have tax breaks. But so if you're making $50,000 a year, you get $50,000. And the other part of it is for Andrew and his wife, two people living in Skagway, the basic cost of your necessities, your fuel, your groceries, water, whatever those basic necessities are, that sales tax amount will be deposited in your account electronically at the beginning of each month. So nobody pays any sales tax on the necessities to live in the area that they're at. And so it's fairly progressive in that way, that the basic needs. But anything over that, you're paying sales tax on. So if you don't want to consume, you can save money very rapidly. And but the aspect that I like out of it is it takes away, because the reason people are spending a lot of money to get people elected is because they want favors in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And the biggest one is they want to be able to save money for their business on a lot of that. And so you have all these loopholes that Amazon, JCPenney, all the big companies are in there getting loopholes. Smaller enterprises, not so much. There's not, and so I think it helps level that playing field where a lot of that lobbying effect could be diminished if there wasn't an option for somebody to go in and say, well, I need a tax exemption on this, or I need write this into this part and help me out. Because you see it all the time where these large multinational corporations are paying next to zero as far as any kind of taxes going into the system. And it's all these loopholes that their well-paid lobbyists are able to get into whatever federal bill that they want and move that forward. And it's all in the sake of economic development or whatever to give them this break. And yeah, you can make that argument, but at some point somebody has to pay.
I know what's happening now doesn't work. I think beyond that, though, you've got such high levels of corruption now in the United States that, you see when announcements happen on the federal level on a Friday that impact the stock market, and then it gets retracted on a Monday. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I know what just happened.
Well, and I love that. I love what's the name of the company that they track? You can invest with them, and they'll track. You can pick a member of Congress or a senator or representative.
And it's both sides of the aisle.
It's both sides of their aisle, and you can make really good money tracking their investments.
Oh, that is a fact. So what was it? This last one. So it was Trump announced that they were going to do tariffs, 100% tariffs on China. an hour before the announcement was made a big $124 million is dumped into Bitcoin as a short sell, right? And that person made something like $619 million over the course of the next 2 days before it was retracted. I go, okay, well, yeah, of course. Somebody knew. So, it was the biggest coincidence ever.
Yeah.
And, Pelosi, she's one of the ones they have the app trackers for.
I think hers is the best one.
Yeah, it's one of the best.
One of the best ones.
There's like 7 or 8 of them. Both, like I said, both sides.
Both sides are doing it.
Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, she had one. She started accumulating more wealth. So if you have that high a level of corruption where it's just out in the open and everybody can see it happening in real time, I don't know that any system fixes it at that point, because then that's the problem with having money as a god. There's no moral code that goes with it. It's just accumulate more. And money likes to move, right? So I don't know. It's a little philosophical, I suppose. It's probably not the most exciting topic for a podcast, but
who knows?
Who knows? So again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic about it. Roll out a 23% sales tax. Let's do it. As somebody who's not a huge consumer, I think it's great, especially since we get a sales tax holiday 6 months out of the year in Skagway. But
I just thought it was
do something.
I just thought it was an interesting way of looking at that, because you'd eliminate the IRS, absolutely no IRS,
and everybody's for that,
right? But then also illegal activity. So you've got a drug dealer that goes and pays cash for a Camaro or Porsche or whatever. Right now, he's not, that income that comes in, he's not paying any income tax on that. But if he goes buys a Porsche, he's going to be paying sales tax on that.
Well, that's a good point.
So you're recouping that money that's gained illegally. When they go to purchase something, they're going to be paying sales tax on it.
No, that's a good point. Even, other than...
And then also it would lower the cost of producing something, so it's not going to add 23%. We're going to end up paying about the way the authors... I'm not an economist. I think anybody that knows me knows that. But the author's premise on this is that if you take all these levels of taxation that are already there and you just put it to the end, that your cost of goods is going to drop. And so you're basically going to be paying the same amount in the future as you are now, because the actual cost of the product is going to be 23% less.
Hey, it sounds good to me. Like I say, what's happening now isn't working.
And that's the thing.
You're right about multiple taxations over the chain. I hadn't thought about that.
You talk to people, and I would agree with the statement that capitalism has done to lift more people out of poverty, and is the greatest economic tool out there is capitalism.
Yeah, it's proven.
But what we have right now, I don't consider capitalism, because I think one of the terms people use is crony capitalism. Right. But there's so many weights on the scale that it's no longer a balanced system for everybody. If the rules apply to everybody in the same thing, then capitalism is an amazing tool that lifts all boats. That's not the system we have now. And trying to figure out, with so much invested in it staying the same, with so much money there, so many politicians that are vested in it staying the same, how do we change that to go back the other way without a revolution?
That's the hard part.
That's always
because the first word that came to mind was revolution.
Can you do that without a revolution? And usually, when you're going to have a change like that, it's not going to be going back to the same system. You're going, because what you see a lot now, or what I'm seeing a lot, is a lot of people pushing towards socialism. You're going to the socialism, communistic method that the state should cover, and we're partway there now with a lot of the things that our government is providing for us. We're already partway down that road. It's not that big of a step, I don't think, to be a socialist society. But it's, do you go that in what is that cycle? And I would hate to see that cycle, because it's, I feel sorry for Marty. I feel sorry for Marty because his life. Sorry, Marty. Okay. But you look at the opportunities we had when we were younger, and like you're talking about the what it costs to buy a house for a young person these days. Some of these things to get started, the hurdles for them are so much higher than they were for us.
Oh yeah.
How does that
And I had to work my ass off for 10 years in Skagway to put together enough money for a down payment, right? And I worked 2 jobs to do it, two difficult jobs because without a college education to fall back on, I was selling tours and waiting tables, bartending. That's what I did to save up enough money to buy a house. But most people like working. I feel like I mean, maybe not most, maybe a lot of people do. I see a lot of the young people I see in Skagway, they work hard. I mean, so that's what I see from my personal perspective. I know you hear, I see a lot of people are lazy nowadays. Well, we were lazy when we were young too. I don't know about all that. Worked hard when we had to work and played hard when we wanted to play.
Yeah, I think I see both.
Yeah.
Somebody that hires, we hire quite a few people throughout the year and, or over the years, and you see both. You see people that have no work ethic at all and don't know, but I think it's, what was your family structure like at home?
Right.
What were you taught? I think it has to be modeled by other people in your life. You see that and you develop that because it's like, okay, we got to hustle. We got to find a way to make this work.
That's the way I always say it. I always had to hustle.
But if you've never had to hustle, if everything was provided for you and you never learned that trait when you were younger,
right,
it's a lot harder to develop that later.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I feel like the hard thing is you can be a hard worker now. You're just getting out of, maybe you're going to college, maybe you're not. You can be a hard worker, and doesn't mean you're going to be buying a house in 10 years.
And that's the part that I'm worried about is the ability for them to, because you see the statistics about people that are delayed marriage, and some people are like, yeah, Doug, you never got married, you don't have any kids. But looking at that, that's kind of that core part of American society is the family, having kids. And if you start having generations that don't have that security of, am I going to be able to buy a house? And so some of those cost factors, so they're putting off getting married, they're putting off having kids. That fundamentally changes our country in many ways. And so not being able to look ahead and see what that end result is. I know how blessed I was as a kid and the things that I've been able to experience. And I would hope that my niece, my nephews, my friends like Marty and stuff can have a similar type of lifestyle or similar experiences going forward. And I don't know if that's going to be there for them, and that's scary.
It is. When when our economies are so dependent, now with fishing not being what it once was, and other industries like logging kind of disappearing, we are very heavily dependent. Not just Skagway's 100% dependent on tourism, but a lot of Alaska has become very dependent on tourism, and tourism only happens when people have money to travel and it's safe to travel, right? When all those things are true,
and
so it can turn around overnight, like it did during the pandemic.
Yeah, and so going down that road, seeing with your experience in Skagway, I've been in Haines for a long time. I look at our communities. Some people would say they're vastly different, but I think we're very, very similar, and most of Alaska is similar. What does Alaska have for economics? We've got resources. You can sell fish, you can sell timber, you can sell minerals of some kind, or you can sell the experience. Those are kind of the 4.
Yeah.
Let me know if I'm missing anything, but throughout Alaska,
government. That's the other big industry.
But that is an industry here, but it's
over half of the population.
It's over half the population is employed by the government, but the money to pay them has got to come out of one of those other 4.
Yep.
And so for any kind of economy, you're giving up something to get something.
Right.
Skagway is willing to give up their summers and have millions of people come into the summertime in order to provide the things that they want. I think Haines is kind of schizophrenic because everybody has a different idea what you want Haines to be. And so commercial fishing isn't as strong as it used to be. There used to be, I think, 110, 115 commercial gill net licenses in Haines. Now there's like 35. Used to have a strong timber industry. That's not here, and that's probably not going to come back to the extent it was in my lifetime, if ever.
No, there's not even a sawmill.
There's not a sawmill here. The quality of the wood isn't as good as in other places, so there's a lot of factors. The cost of getting it off the mountains is prohibitively expensive for the quality of the wood, so you've got that issue. Mining, that's a possibility, but there's a lot of give and take with that as well.
It tends not to benefit communities other than local governments. It can be good.
Local governments can be good. Doesn't always create a lot of jobs, and a lot of them are camp jobs where they come in and out for 2 weeks,
Right.
not necessarily building a community. But it can provide growth. All of these can provide monetary aspects, but you're giving up something for each of them.
Well, that's
so
part of the compromise we keep talking
that
about,
is,
right?
It is that compromise, but you look at places down south where they're putting in whether or not these are good things or not. The different businesses you got agriculture down south. You could have some agriculture here, but it's very expensive. That trying to figure out, because we all want more. We want a new public safety building. We want our roads paved. We want our roads plowed. We want funding for full funding for the schools. There's all of these wants, but we seem to lack the ability to decide what we want to give up in exchange for funding the wants.
And needs at times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think these are going to be issues that all over Alaska are going to be more and more, prescient in the coming years. And so because everything's kind of shifted toward tourism, people are going to have to decide, the levels of tourism they want, that they're happy with. And there's so many rug pulls that happen in all of these industries. And so you see it in Juneau, right? So, their former manager in Juneau, they make, we're never going to have more than 5 berths. That's going to be our limit because they sold the property to Norwegian Cruise Lines. It's being developed by Goldbelt, I think, is doing it. Or it might be Hunatotum, I can't remember. And so they're going to have 5 berths. Oh, here comes Douglas Island. 2 berths. So it'll be 7 berths. And those look like, from the pictures I saw of what they're planning, those look like post-Panamax type berths. So you're going to drop another 11,000, 12,000 passengers into what's already a lot of people consider oversaturated. So the public trust, that's how you destroy public trust. You say, we're only going to let this much happen. What should have happened to build public trust would have been, we're going to put a daily passenger cap for this municipality. And then you can build all the docks you want, but you can only allow so many passengers into port. And that would have built trust with the community. So, those votes weren't close. Like 58, 59% no. You keep doing stuff like that, though, suddenly you'll find yourself going hard the other direction, and it'll destroy businesses that were predicated on having that volume, right? Can't do those kind of rug pulls on people. It's not the right way to approach tourism or any kind of industry. You don't say, well, we're going to, log this secondary growth forest and then go into the primary growth, and take all of that too and go, whoops. You can't do that. You can't say, no, we're going to clean up all the mine, all of the arsenic and mercury when we're done, and then leave the open pit there with a bunch of garbage around it when you leave, right? But we're talking on the history of Alaska.
But the hard part of that is, depending on who's in the government, it's easy for an assembly or whatever to say, this is our route, right? We're not going to have more than 5 berths. And then in 2 election spans, you can change the majority of the assembly.
It could be 3 years.
It could be 2 years, 3 years, totally change, and the new ones are going to come back. When we're talking about Lutak Dock, people were worried about ore going over there, all going across the dock. It's like, it's not big enough. There's a bunch of reasons that ore's not going to go over the dock, but they said, if you would just guarantee that ore won't go over the dock, we'll be in favor of fixing it this way. And I'm just bluntly honest with him. I said, I cannot guarantee you that.
Right, you can't hold other future assemblies.
We can pass an ordinance right now in 3 meetings or whatever, but we can pass an ordinance that says no ore will go over that dock. But in a year, you can have a new assembly that'll change that and allow ore over the dock. And then you're going to say, well, you guys promised. And it's like, well, we made that attempt, but you don't know what a future assembly, you don't know what a future legislature is going to do.
That's a fact.
And so depending on, and sometimes it's good to change your mind because there's new facts that come out, things have changed, and you want to move in a different direction, but not being able to, we're only going to stick with this, knowing it could be a very short time and you're going to have different elected officials that are going to do something totally different.
Yeah, it's one of the frustrations of, being in local government, like I'm sure you experience the same thing. Like, one of the nice things, if there are positives about pandemics and rock slides, is that it was a very clear-cut goal. get over pandemic, stop rocks. Okay, everybody's in agreement on that. So those are easy issues to deal with, right? But you're touching on stuff where, you have wedge issues in a community, or even I would say like in Skagway, one of the last things when I was outgoing mayor is we finally got a containerization ordinance passed for ore, so that if ore in the future, because we have all the contamination that was caused by irresponsible ore shipping in the past. So the modern way to do it, and it's done globally, is to containerize it. It's a safe way to transport ore. I think there were a lot of people in Skagway that wanted to ban it entirely. And so as mayor, I'm listening to that. And then there was, the very pro-mining people. No, we have to have it the way it has always been. And we want to keep all this old infrastruccture that has giant holes in it. That's not responsible either. So, I try to find, as leadership, where's the compromise? Boy, most of the world is doing containerization. Let's do that. Well, it failed the first time it went to the table, which really shocked me because, I like compromise. If you've pissed off everybody a little bit,
perfect solution.
Perfect. It is, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe everybody can live with it, And really in Skagway, the overwhelming majority of people wanted no more ore. So even finding that compromise was probably weighted a little heavy toward the people who were very, pro-ore shipping. And so, by coming up with a containerization, in my mind, I kept asking that same question. What's the thing we can pass at the table that has the most likelihood of being here in 5 years? An outright ban, that's
not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. That's going to get overturned if somebody can make some money, right? And saying, well, we want unrestricted, we want to keep this ore loader with these giant holes in it that people can literally see ore dust blowing out of it. No, I don't want that as a citizen, So, where is the middle ground? Oh, well, do what everybody else in the planet's doing. Go with this more responsible route. Well, yeah, it pissed off the people who run the mines. It pissed off the people who were running it down here. It pissed off the people who wanted to ban it completely. Problem solved. That's a win. But it was the second time it came around. It had more support from the table and, was tweaked a little bit by somebody smarter than me at the table. And it passed. So outgoing, that was the last thing that was signed, as mayor. Will it last? I don't know. 5 years, 10 years. Say we get 2 years from now, we're only getting one boat. For whatever reason. Could be a million different reasons. Or no boats. It'll be like when I was talking to Brad and we were trying to scramble ideas to come up with to save us if we had no cruise ships. We came up with like a call center. We could start a call center. I like that's probably the best bet. Could we build a big warehouse style building and do a call center out of here? I don't know. If there were ways to diversify the economy, somebody smarter than me would have figured it out a long time ago, right? But sometimes necessity causes that. But so I don't know what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years. I don't think you can govern thinking too much about the future, but you got to think about it. What's the most likely to last? So that seemed like the most likely. But I guarantee you enough money was promised to enough people in town to do a certain thing. They'll overturn it within seconds.
Well, and that's the other thing that I keep coming back to in my own thoughts on economy and stuff and small towns and what we're dealing with is if you have a stable economy that you can count on, if there is something else coming about, it's easier to take a stand for the betterment of the community than if your economy sucks.
Yeah.
When you, as an individual, if you don't have money coming in, you're like, I'll do that job. I'll do that job.
It's funny.
You're not really picky about it. But if you're making six figures and somebody says, hey, I'd really like you to take this job for $70,000, you're like, yeah, not a chance.
I think one of our biggest issues is small communities, and I say it all the time privately in my home usually, is like we're so bad at thinking ahead and planning. And I say, I say things and you piss people off, and in a small town, you piss somebody off. Sometimes you piss them off for life. But we have 4 berths, and those 4 berths are necessary to sustain the economy we have right now.
Yep.
So, but one of them has a giant rock hanging over it and instability on the entire mountain slope. And to the point where they have to park boats and tender people in on the forward and drive them quickly past the slide area on buses. Yep. And, looking at maybe $40 million project to just solve the one rock slide part of it. And I'm like, well, instead of dumping tens of millions of dollars to fix something that's a Band-Aid, literally moving a mountain to hope that it works, and then a rock, the 2 days after you finish it, a rock comes down on another part of the mountain and wipes out the dock. Why don't we take all those resources and build a new dock where the ferry terminal is now with a ferry component? I worked on getting an MOU with the Department of Transportation for that purpose. And it took every year, 4 years out of my mayoral terms to get that done and brought to the table and approved at the assembly. And then, since I left, nothing's happened with it, of course. And it's maddening to me. It's maddening to me because, what happens when the rock comes down? Because it will. Gravity dictates it's going to happen. And the dock is right by the mountain. And when it does, and the dock no longer can sustain 2 ships, and we're down to 3, or, God forbid, 2 boats, we don't have anything. Nothing planned. No contingency. Not even 1% design for a new dock using the MOU we have with the Department of Transportation. That's maddening to me, because I like that kind of forward thinking. Let's think 10 years down the road. Let's think 15 years down the road. I heard you guys hired a planner, though.
Finally,
and Skagway
we've
desperately needs
been
it.
trying. We've had people off and on over the years, and it's just, as you can imagine, in a small town, there's a lot. If you start planning, there's a segment of the community. No matter what you plan, there's people that don't like the plan, and so then the person that's in charge of writing the plan and coalescing community opinion from different meetings, they take the brunt of it. And sometimes they don't last very long, because there are individuals from all sides of the political spectrum that
Bullies.
Yes, that would be a good word to put for it.
Yeah, bullies.
Yeah, bullies out there, and
disruption.
It can be hard moving forward. You've seen this from your job, that when you have the bullies out there that are pushing one thing, and doesn't matter if it makes sense or not, and it comes from all avenues, it limits the number of people that want to serve an office in a small town. And it also makes it extremely difficult to move forward, because when you start looking at a 5, 10, 15-year plan, that's me too. It's like, whatever we're doing today is going to be totally different in 10 years.
I think in a place like Skagway, you're talking about your only source of your economy. Those questions become a lot easier to answer, you would think.
Yeah.
We need dock, boat come, we make money. It's really that simple. There's nothing else beyond that. So when dock have rock, and rock fall down, go boom, we better have another dock.
We need to have something else.
That we can phase that one out and have the one that doesn't have rock go boom, right? So that's why it's maddening to me. I get, you have complex issues about, Lutak dock and how it's going to be used, and people's concerns about ore, and a lot of different voices, some of them rational, some perhaps irrational. That becomes really complicated and very difficult to do long-term planning for.
Oh, it's impossible.
But some things aren't that difficult. What you're talking about, you get into bullying, you're right. I'm very lucky that I have a wife who's extremely thin-skinned, because when we were going through pandemic stuff and, other stuff, people coming on to social media where they're always very bold, attacking her, like she had anything to do with the pandemic or any of it,
Your wife was the cause of the pandemic?
Yeah,
I hadn't heard that story before.
Oh, and lots of other things she did.
Lots of other things. She was the one responsible, huh?
Well, they're trying to hurt me.
Hurt
right?
you, yeah, so they go after her.
What they don't know is that, I'm extremely patient, because I'm a fisherman. So, and words don't hurt me, so none of that. And she's the same way, So, that's, not everybody's that thick-skinned, though. And, it is detrimental to small communities to let bullies take over the narrative. And, I think we're getting to a point where most people are getting off social media who have any self-respect. But, a lot of the bullies are on social media, right? Because they can have free reign there. It's a Wild West. And I really wish there were more people, when somebody is bullying somebody irrationally, people who stand up and say, you know what? You suck. Why don't you shut the fuck up, right? I wish there was more of that. But I think I think we've moved past a lot of that on social media. But even within the sphere, like you go to a restaurant, you're mayor of Haynes, and you go to a restaurant, and somebody comes up to you full of vinegar, and they're like, I don't appreciate. It'd be nice instead of you having to say it, if somebody else said, leave them alone. People did that for me sometimes. That's why I say that. And I remember how good that felt to not have to be the one to be like, I'm out right now with my wife, and we're enjoying dinner. So please call me or send me an email. We'll set up a time for you to meet me in the mayor's office. And after you've done that a few times and set some boundaries, it gets better. But I'm sure you had to deal with it. You run into somebody at the post office who's all worked up about something, and then they.
Honestly, no.
Well, that happens in Skagway. We had people
No,
quit the assembly because
there was people that would come and they would come and talk to me, and they'd come to the store, but I can't think of anybody that was not anybody that was like out of control or angry or anything like that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it was one of those that I'm not sure why, because I know there were other people on the assembly and stuff that had different experiences, but during my 3 years, people's emails were different. Not all the emails were the best, but when I would go out, people would ask me stuff, but it was always in a polite, civil manner.
That's good.
I didn't really experience the bullying.
I think a lot of that was early on in the pandemic too, so there's probably that. But I will say, and I said it a lot.
And it could have been too because they knew my dad.
Oh, right.
And my dad was very.
The overwhelming majority of people were super nice and supportive and said like really nice things. It's a tiny minority of bullies. It's a tiny minority.
Yeah.
And you can do anything. We were literally giving people money, and they're getting mad about that. Getting mad that we took the CARES Act money and just decided to share it with everybody, so that we could have people could pay their their bills. So. But even some people got mad about that, Imagine getting free money and you get mad.
Getting ticked off about free money. What is this world coming to?
That's fine. I figured that was part of the job.
I was mad because I tried to put my application in, but it was only for people from Skagway. I was a little disappointed with that.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised you didn't move. Yeah. Man, if we had a big sporting goods store in Skagway, that'd be great. It's like paradise coming over here. I love good sporting goods store.
I appreciate you loving
gear,
I appreciate you liking good sporting goods stores.
Yeah. Well, because hardware stores, and you got the Mountain Shop that have some gear, but not a lot of fishing gear and fishing lures and firearms and other fun toys.
Well, as you know, I'm willing to ship stuff to Skagway.
I know. I'm going to take a look at the offerings here when we're done.
Yeah.
See if you got any new stuff since I was here.
Phone call away. So what else? What are you on to now? You're mayor for 4 years. You got the container ordinance in. Survived all the bullies. Still living in Skagway.
I love it.
So you're writing. You're still writing. What else is on your plate?
Still writing. I spent a lot of time. I probably went fishing more this year than I have since my first year in Skagway. So there was that. Like I said at the beginning, I got to hustle to make a living. So still doing tons of writing work. I've had more writing work than I think I've ever had. A lot of website type content writing. Did more pieces for Fish Alaska this past year than I've ever done in one cycle. I also was hosting karaoke twice a week during the summer.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're a karaoke guy.
Yeah, you do not want me.
I love karaoke. I love it. So hosting is a chance. At my age, I just turned 55.
Yeah.
And so my fear is I don't want to. I've seen it happen with other people, not just in Skagway, but other places where they hit a certain age and they don't really go out anymore. And then they start getting this attitude, oh, those summer workers. And I don't want to be that guy. So I go to karaoke. I'm hosting. I meet all these people I would have never met. They're very young. A lot of them are optimistic. So they're not the surly longtime locals. They're fun to be around. It's good for me to do that, not just to make a little extra money, but it's actually fun. I get to meet a lot of cool people. Did a lot of photography this year. I've always done photography. So I've done a lot of that. Started a consulting company this past year, and started working on consulting. So what else? I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, I'm working on a couple of books right now. I got outlines written for a nonfiction and a fiction book because I wanted to do more publishing. I published one book years ago in Skagway, and it's time to do some more of that.
All right.
So I ran for assembly and lost. So I don't think a lot of my ideas were well received. So that's fine too. And it's good because, the second I knew I lost, I got another outline done. So
Perfect.
So, just keep them busy.
Yeah.
Got bills to pay, and I really like being busy. And I like talking to people, and I like doing things where I get to meet new people. I think that's one of the best things about public service, and the thing I enjoyed the most, like you were saying, meeting people in here. I got to meet people I would have never got to meet had I not been mayor. And especially during the pandemic, because, working on the PVSA, I, had many conversations with Murkowski and Sullivan and Don Young, and then Peltola after Don Young died. And I got such a different perspective of, especially like Don Young, who, I always, before that, my perception of him was, based on what I'd seen on various forms of media. But talking to him, he was really funny. Mm-hmm. Got along with him really well. And man, that was such a success story, the PVSA override of grassroots, town-based government, and then state government getting behind it, and then federal government. So you get to meet all these people, the people that work for them, the regular people you meet at and other elected officials from all over the state of Alaska. We had the mayor's group during the pandemic, where all the mayors are getting together on Zoom. And there's all these really cool people I met with, a lot of them, like you. I've stayed friends with you. I stayed friends with so many of those people. Just really great friendships and relationships. That's the best part of it. I wouldn't trade that part of it for the world. It was great.
No, I would agree with that. Meeting you, Beth Weldon and Juno.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just the three of us seems
she didn't like my beard.
Every meeting of the group, we had our northern southeast contingent that was sitting down there. But then, like you said, working with Jesse Keel and at first Representative Hannon, then Story.
Yeah, I love Hannon.
Getting to know them and work with them, Dana Herndon. And then, Senator Murkowski, Senator Stevens, Congressman Young, Patola, and now I didn't get a chance to work with Congressman Begich, but I had a chance to meet him when he was running at that time. But just, you see the people out there, but then getting to know them on a one-on-one basis, and just regardless of political party, just knowing that we might have a different way of wanting to get to the end, but a lot of times we're looking at we want the best for Alaska, we want the best for our communities, we want the best for our country. We might disagree on what that looks like, but the basic goal is the same. And to have those conversations and develop those relationships with people, it's been, that was far and away the best part.
One of the coolest
things.
And
even people in Haines that I got to know better.
Yeah, same.
There's people living here pretty much my whole life, but people that were just kind of in the periphery, but whether they were on a board, a commission, or they were just really interested in a certain topic, and you just had a lot of conversations with them, getting to know them on a deeper level. And to be honest, that's part of why I'm doing this podcast. Is so many meetings you'd have, our assembly meetings, you get 3 minutes of public comment.
Right.
So you have somebody gets up for 3 minutes, somebody for 3 minutes. So you get a 3-minute opinion, a 3-minute opinion, 3-minute opinion, 3-minute opinion. Okay, the assembly gets to speak, the mayor gets to speak, we're going to vote on it. There's no really getting to what are the real issues on it. There's no dialogue back and forth.
All the
really.
work that went into that
that went into that. And there's also no developing an understanding of where somebody comes from. Like you coming from Tampa, your history goes back to Cuba, pre-revolutionary Cuba, very austere lifestyle growing up. Things were hard. You had to work to help the family. Getting that knowledge of what somebody's been through, I think teaches me a lot about why they have the positions they have when they're either in public office or when they're making a comment in a public meeting. And I think it's a lot easier to come to good public policy if we know the people on a personal level better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what it humanizes it.
It's like being in a boat with them.
Yeah, and so I don't have a boat, so I'm hoping this podcast is going to be my boat that I get to talk to and introduce people, whether or not it's 2 or 3. It might not be many. I might need to get a better host in order to have this work out. But share the people that I've gotten to meet over the years with others.
You know what surprised me most about the people that we met in government is a lot of people in government are hilarious.
Yes.
A lot of funny people.
Yes.
I've always, I really enjoy being around funny people, and people have dry sense of humor, and I think that was the biggest surprise, because my affiliation with other organizations over the years, you meet people at different levels of the organization, and they're not always very funny,
No.
But man, people in government. There's a certain dry sarcasm, but also like genuineness that is very endearing.
Yeah. No, I've had.
Maybe you have to have a sense of humor to be in government,
Especially that might be the way to get through
especially
it.
as a volunteer.
As a volunteer, yes. But no, just the staffers that you deal with most often, but then also when you meet your senators and your representatives and get to know them, there is kind of this when you see them in the Capitol, whatever, there's kind of, or when you visit the Capitol, whether it's you in Washington, D.C. or Juneau, there's kind of this stuffiness, really serious. Everybody's in their ties and suits and whatever. But when they come to the communities, or when you meet them one-on-one there, it's at a personal, they're humans like us.
They're funny.
And they can be really, really funny on certain things.
A lot of them.
And yeah, it's nice seeing that side that I don't think all the public gets to see.
No, and it's important. Like, I hadn't thought of it that way until you mentioned it. But the public does have that perspective. They come, they see that this thing's getting talked about. They probably heard it from somebody. Sales tax increase. Oh, I heard. Did you hear that they're thinking about sales tax increase? And they come to the meeting and they speak about it, and then they see it happen at the table over maybe 20, 30 minutes, and then it's voted on, and don't realize that it went through 2 years on various committees. It went through finance. It went through civic affairs. It was the brainchild of one of the assembly members, and she got the idea from a couple of business owners, and all they see is the cherry.
Yep.
They don't see any of that sundae.
Nope.
And it's already melted by the time it gets to the table most of the time. It's why it's a bummer. You're so invested. I always felt for assembly members when they put all this work into something and they spend all this time at the committee level to work on it, and they get to the table and get shot down. 40 people show up to the meeting to say how stupid it is, and they're like, and you just see it in their face, like, where were you during the committee process? Well, they're working.
And the number of times people are like, there needs to be more meetings about this, and like you said. We've been having meetings for 2 years.
Yeah.
It
doesn't move fast.
It doesn't move fast just because you didn't know about it till the end. They were all publicly. They're on the website. They're on all the different places. And, yeah, and they'll say, well, this isn't what it was originally. He's like, yeah, it's gone through a lot of changes since we first introduced it. Well, there's a lot of changes because we had 2 years of committee meetings on this.
And you're saying the thing you can't say right there, right? And that's unfortunate because, if you're honest all the time, like 100% brutally honest, I don't mean that you would normally lie. What I mean is just telling the 100% truth to somebody about something, you're never going to get elected. You're not. And, that says a lot about a lot of voters, and maybe it's a chance for them to have an introspective moment and say, maybe sometimes the way I approach my elected officials is somewhat immature and shows a lack of understanding about the process. Because, especially when people come to the assembly meetings with vitriol, and anger, and make snide comments about other people in the community with a different opinion, that always drives me crazy. Keep the comments focused on the assembly. You're a guest at a private meeting when you come to talk at an assembly meeting. Mm-hmm. That is a private meeting of the assembly. They're allowing you to speak. And they're elected officials, and they're there because you voted for them. But I guarantee you, I've had it done to me, and I know a lot of other people have had it done a lot more often. I will never vote for you again. I don't think that's quite the threat you think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think that's quite the threat you think it is. Kindness goes a lot further. Going up there and stating your opinions. But, man, that fire and brimstone, I don't know. It just doesn't sit well. And you want a lot of that fire and brimstone? Bring a lot of honesty and truth to those conversations, and say, well, it's not our responsibility to force you to pay attention to what's going on. That's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. Try saying that during a campaign and see if you get elected. That's what I mean.
Yep.
But it's true. We bear the responsibility for the things that happen in our community. The government, Skagway government, is not the 6 people at the table or the staff that is picking up your trash and handling your finances at City Hall. That's everybody in the community.
Everybody.
And just because you didn't know something was happening doesn't absolve you of the responsibility of knowing that it's happening. So, I've always taken that approach to local government. When I started wrapping my head around it, it was great when I moved to Skagway. I'm like, shit, you can make a difference here. You can go to an assembly meeting and say something, and they're listening to you. They're looking you in the eye, listening to you. Wow, that's great. What an opportunity. But it would never have occurred to me to ever go to an assembly meeting and bash the person that spoke before me because I disagree with them.
The one that always
Childish.
The one that always amazed me is the ones that would get up and bash the assembly,
Yeah.
calling them names, calling out their character or whatever, and I'm like, do you think that's gonna? Are you reading the room here?
Plus, it's your neighbor.
It's your neighbor.
It's your neighbor.
And there's a number of times that I saw, you could tell that the vote swung, but not in the way that they anticipated. That there's going to be, that there's people I'd had a conversation with that they were going to vote a certain way. They didn't tell me how they were going to vote. I was like, I'm pretty certain based on our conversation, this is the way they're going to vote. And you could see that, I mean, just, I was watching everybody. I mean, you tell somebody they got their 3 minutes. You don't have anything else to do. You're listening to them, but you watch the people at the dais. You watch the people in the audience. You can see the effect that's having.
Yeah.
And it's some of them like, yeah, you just cross that vote off your list. They're not going to vote the way you wanted to.
Yeah, you attract. You don't reject.
Uh-huh.
It's also interesting to me, like going beyond government, social media really opens the window to some people's mindset. And I often think that they're, smoking a lot of weed or drinking a lot when they're posting, because that's the only real explanation for a complete and utter lack of understanding of how human beings operate. And, you see it in Skagway where somebody goes on a tirade on social media, just bashing, 80% of the community, because they're drunk or whatever, who knows. And then literally like 3 months later, they're like, we've been searching for housing for the last 3 months and can't find anything. You're like,
wonder why.
Like, oh my God.
I wonder
really?
why.
Yeah,
Yep.
You live there. I know it's hard sometimes to get along or try to get along, but man, it's certainly in your best interest to try to get along in a small town.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the middle of February. Furnace is out. It's 20 below, 60 with the wind chill. And, the guy shows up, he's wearing a MAGA hat or he's wearing an Obama hat. You're probably not going to bash his politics.
Probably not.
Especially in Skagway where you're lucky to find one guy who knows how to fix it.
You want the furnace to get fixed.
Yeah. That's a good, that's a little, that's more socially oriented than political. But, I guess everything's inherently political. But, people got to find a way to get along. And, maybe sometimes they're not so good at it. So these kind of things are healthy. Like you asked me to be on the podcast. I've never been on a podcast. I didn't know it was going to be filmed, or I would have tried to dress nicer. But this is how I dress normally. So you get the...
That works for me.
I'm probably going to do some fishing tomorrow.
Good. I hope you catch a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a couple anyhow.
Oh, yeah. I think that's inevitable. I know every time I go home from fishing and Brittany says, did you catch anything? And I go... Even after all these years.
After all these years, you still have doubts. You doubt my abilities.
Come on, man. But, maybe something good will happen. One thing, there's a lot of people who say, they're like, you know what? I don't care if I catch anything. I'm just glad to be out here. And those are people I say, get the hell out of my boat.
I never say that with fishing, but in hunting, when I'm going hunting now, like beginning of September, my oldest nephew went up on a sheep hunt in the Delta Controlled Management area. I drew a tag with me. We didn't even see anything close to being legal. The weather sucked and we came out early. But the clear days and stuff, that was one of the best experiences I've ever had.
I bet.
And it was just cool, but it was his first time on a fly-in sheep hunt, an area I've never been before, on top of a mountain, just looking over these just amazing valleys. And alongside this glacier, it was the coolest camping, hiking trip that I've ever been on.
That's awesome.
And it did not matter to me that I didn't get a sheep.
I want to go hunting with you. I don't care about actually getting anything. I've never been hunting with an experienced hunter, even though, because Skagway, there's really, people go hunting. They drive up West Creek and basically shoot a bear from the car. I don't have a lot of interest in that. But, man, something like that, if you ever got room for one more, let me know.
I'll keep you posted.
I'll carry shit.
Perfect.
I'll carry it.
That makes my life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, there we go. That sounds wonderful.
No, this is an amazing trip.
They had these deer come in, so we had deer come in, and muley deer came into
Skagway. Did you guys get them all taken care of, or did you send them back to the Yukon?
Well, so yeah, they're still there as far as I know. You
Okay.
see evidence of them. I haven't seen them wandering around. We see the evidence of them when I'm hiking or whatever. But they're down there, and Fish and Game's like, well, they're not indigenous, so you need to get rid of them. And then all the locals were like, and even the hunters in Skagway were like, no, don't let them try to establish
here. Yeah.
And I was thinking, I was so caught, and I had such conflicted emotions. I'm like, this is like your one chance to go hunt a deer. And I never really got to do it, But I was like, oh, can you imagine being that person?
The one guy that is, everybody's like, oh.
And then you get a picture taken on social media. That is one of my biggest fears in life, is to be doing something stupid and then have your picture on social media.
Yeah.
So stay far away from that. So as far as I know, they're still there. I don't think it's realistic that they're going to establish. I think they're just wandering down there. Yeah. Moose wander down there.
Moose wander down. Yeah.
From the railroad tracks.
They don't care about the border.
I know they do, because I had a game cam out there at near Boulder, which isn't just a couple miles up the tracks, mile and a half, and I've got a moose on my trail cam.
Nice.
So there's even moose, but
yep.
I don't think you're really allowed to hunt anything. But they wanted you to hunt the deer.
Wanted you to hunt the deer. Yeah.
So I don't know. There's also fish that come up in Skagway, but they're not recognized as fish streams. So we usually catch a few every year, a few coho or whatever. Yeah. But without the kings, it's just a bummer. So there is nothing better than a fresh king.
Oh, fresh king salmon's the best out there. I agree with you on that.
I'll tell you what, though. I caught in canoe for the first time this summer. And I sent you some pictures.
Yeah.
And the fillets are pretty big. With the belly, the bellies, what they reminded me of is like Ivory King. They are literally marbled with just beautiful fat, which surprised me. I didn't realize they'd be such a fatty fish. And so I took the bellies off, which were pretty thick, about 3/4 of an inch thick, and just put salt and pepper on them, put them meat side down on the grill, charcoal, and but with the heat way off of it, and covered it so that it could cook in that fat.
Yeah.
And then flipped it over after a few minutes and really let it get a bunch of smoke skin side down, and then pulled it, and that was a top 3 fish.
Okay.
It reminded me of king salmon belly on a fresh caught fish. Absolutely wonderful. So that was shocking. I didn't realize they were going to be such a delicious fish. So
you're telling me the population of those in Canada is going to take a hit this next summer?
Well, I went up there. I put some effort into it this summer because I figured out a spot, and I went there and didn't have any luck, and but I learned, and was able to get some nice trout that day and some pike. So, but then I went back. I had one opportunity to go back up here a few weeks ago and found them. Not in the spot I thought they would be, in a different spot, which, perseverance pays off. But you're allowed one per day with a 2-day possession limit. We only had the 1 day, so we caught the 2 fish, and then I was like, let's stop fishing.
Yeah.
Leave them alone.
Leave them alone.
I always believe in doing that. And especially because apparently I learned about them. They're the fastest growing fish up here. They grow really fast. And so they have small hearts. So their survival rate is very low.
Oh.
So it makes sense to keep one if you catch it. And then just leave them.
Leave them alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that battle is going to probably kill them.
Yeah, it probably would. Yeah. And so we got one, I think got one 28-inch and one that was 37 inch. So, good fishing. Beautiful fish. A lot of fun to catch.
I look forward to more pictures.
Oh yeah, I'll send them your way. And then you probably know the story from coho fishing last year, where I caught the biggest coho ever caught in Haines.
Yes. So, did you have your derby ticket before you go out tomorrow?
Well, I don't have one yet. I was thinking about getting one. I ran that derby in Skagway for so long. I was like, I'm done with derbies. But how much is a derby ticket?
$25.
Oh, that's cheap.
You win $1,000.
To go to the Sportsman's Association.
It does, and that's what they use for scholarships and stuff for the high school kids.
Oh yeah, I'm in. I'll support that. I'll grab it. What time do you open here in the morning? 9. Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah. I'll swing over here when I'm heading out.
Perfect.
In the afternoon, probably.
All right.
Do some combat fishing.
Yeah, there's not that. Last weekend would have been combat fishing. You should be all right this weekend.
Yeah, and everything's late. I couldn't believe how warm it was today.
Yeah, a gorgeous day.
It's like, I heard the Pacific blob is back and bigger than ever. And so that's that warm water upwelling in the Pacific that gives us these really mild winters. So we might be fishing for coho in January.
That wouldn't be a bad thing.
That'd be a great thing.
That'd be a great thing. Yep.
I remember like one of those years, when that Pacific Blob was active, I want to say it was like 2017 maybe, 2017 or 18. Like a couple of the lakes, like Tagish Lake and Tushai Lake never froze at all.
Froze over, yeah.
And Tagish, it was ice. Ice came off of it, mid-April. They hardly had any ice. And then my garden in Skagway never died.
Really?
I never had
everything all winter.
Anything. So, maybe we'll get another one of those.
Time will tell. Wasn't too bad this last winter.
No, it was super mild. We just had one tiny, 2-3 week cold snap.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Yeah. A lot of snow in the mountains for heliskiing, and down here, not much snow to shovel. Perfect winter.
We used to get in the late 90s in Skagway, all the Olympic gold medal ski team would all come here in Skagway. They'd stay at the Gold North when it was a real hotel. And, ski Harding and ski up on the pass.
Yeah.
And then that, when they moved into a retail store and got rid of the hotel, there wasn't really any place for them to go. So I think they started coming here.
Yeah.
And boy, that's really blossomed here. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's a nice hit for a lot of businesses. First thing in the spring, you come off a really slow winter, and having people show up the end of February, first part of March and April, which it's still kind of your shoulder season, and have there's a lot of businesses that makes a big impact for them to get that money coming in.
It used to be that way in Skagway. We were talking about this recently at one of the election forums, and when Skagway's passenger count started hitting around 800,000 or 900,000, everybody was so burnt out at the end of summer. It seemed like nobody really wanted to do things during the winter. Plus, with so much of the housing being purchased by for businesses and seasonal workers, there's very little hotel space for conventions and things. In 99 and in 2000, it was 99 and 2000, we had, so I worked with Buckwheat, and we started, and another fellow named Steve who used to live there, and we started we had a paranormal convention.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
It was called Abduct and Release.
Uh-huh.
And so we had the world's preeminent Bigfoot expert, the world's preeminent UFO expert, a Wiccan white witch who did tarot cards and that kind of thing, and brought them all these different people. There was a bunch of other ones, and brought them all there for this big symposium. It was awesome. Both years were awesome. It was incredible. The second year we did went out to Dai and made a crop circle in the tall grass out there. It got in the Juneau Empire. And I was so bummed when we didn't do a third year. A couple things happened. One was, it was that time when we were starting to get so many passengers that, the eagerness for those types of things waned. But there were also some really religious people in Skagway that got very mad at the White Witch. So, for whatever reason. So,
But it's similar in Haines, not because they're burnt out, but it is because they're burnt out. But you have a lot of businesses that, without having that huge number of tourists in the summertime,
right,
that they try and do as much themselves with as little payroll as possible to save the money for getting through a hard winter.
Right.
And so by the time you get to October, they're all burnt out.
They're burnt out.
And so even with our Eagle Festival, the number of places trying to get enough restaurants open to serve, a lot of them we're just not going to do it. And Haines talks about developing a year-round tourism economy, having more people come in, but trying to figure out a way to balance that so there's enough of those that it makes sense for businesses to stay open for them. Because if you do something and you don't have the businesses stay open, people come and they're like, where are we going to eat? What are we going to? There's nothing to do except this. And so you get a bad review off of that. They don't want to come back.
Right.
You want to put your best foot forward and trying to get that balance, and so that there's enough business that the owners can hire enough people so they're not working 7 days a week, 15-hour, 16-hour days all summer long, and then you get to the winter and they're burnt out and they just don't want to do anymore. They want more business in the wintertime. It's just physically you just can't go anymore.
It's like a lot of the stuff we've talked about tonight. It's this constant striving for balance, and it's extremely difficult up here.
Yep.
And it makes sense it's difficult up here because it's also difficult for nature up here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, our balance is over a span of 6 months and then another 6 months. One's light, one's dark, one's cold, one's warm, or cold, one's colder. Depending on how you look at it.
It's a challenge.
And so our economies have to, and money doesn't work that way. Money wants to flow all the time. So how do you get it to flow in the winter when everybody's burnt out? How do you plan down the road? It's all the same conversation. It's trying to find that balance. You know, it's the struggle of Skagway, Haines, Juneau, Sitka. And then as people start making money off of one industry, trying to maintain that balance becomes more and more difficult because, you know, your growth, you know, capitalism it's hinged on growth. And if you don't have growth, it becomes stagnant or it starts to recede, right? But man, I don't know. If you ever find that secret, you
it won't be me finding
you'll
it.
be the king of Alaska.
It won't be me finding it, but it is tough because I feel fortunate that once we got into the grocery business after 15 years, you know, it was 23 years ago I think we started with groceries, but it took about 15 years to get over that cycle. But in the sporting goods before that, it was the same thing. You know, I was working 7 days a week, and then 6 days a week in the wintertime, and it takes a toll. It definitely takes a toll. And people are like, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Like, I don't have any freaking energy to do that.
Right.
That's and it's only been, you know, with the sports shop, it's only been the last couple of years I've had somebody to work on last year and this year work on Sundays to give me that. Otherwise, during the summer, it was 7 days a week, and that was the best thing for me with COVID. That was the first time since I'd moved home in '94 that I didn't work 7 days a week for the summer, and I was like, wow, there's all sorts of stuff to do in Haines in the summertime. This is kind of cool. But I was always working. I never had a chance to do a lot of those things.
You remember? Totally not. I just had a memory of you. We were at one of the conferences. I think it was AML. It was upstairs at the conference center, and they had that guy. He came in twice, and he was like a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. Yep. And you were putting stuff on there from Hay because we could text things to him or put it on his app and it'd show up on the screen.
I was sending stuff from Hayes. I'll never forget. I hate that kind of stuff.
I do too.
I'm like, we're all elected officials, you know, who have other lives, and we're here getting like corporate techno babble from, and you know, that was the day that other guy gave the speech. He goes, so taxes are what are collected to pay for the things that you. And I'm like, oh my god!
If you think that's what we need to learn, and you have all these elected officials, we're screwed if we don't know that already.
So I remember we had a meeting. Our contingent, the Skagway contingent, had a meeting with Ada to talk about stuff with the ore stuff. And I leaned over to you, and I was like, well, and it was right in the middle of that guy, the second time he was there, and I was like, well, so guess what? I get to leave because we have our meeting with Ada, and you went. Yeah, I hope you fall down the escalator.
Yeah.
That cracked me up. It still cracks me up. I told everybody about that when I got back home. It still cracks me up. I was really worthless AML, that particular one. But the trivia night was fun.
Yeah. No,
it was tough for them. I'm not being critical of them. We were coming out of the pandemic. I'm sure it was extremely difficult to put it together. But I did enjoy it.
And you know, for me, going to those, it wasn't so much the presentations as it was making connections with the mayor from Skagway, the mayor from Juneau, the mayor from Denali Borough, Fairbanks, North Star Borough. You know, you're meeting people from around the state that when the questions they're asking in some of these meetings, it wasn't necessarily people up there, but the questions other people asking when they're describing the issues going on in their communities, like, yeah,
that part's great.
That stuff's happening in Haines.
But that's what Southeast Conference is so
Southeast
awesome.
Conference.
That's to me, like, I love Southeast Conference.
Yeah, and so then you can go, it's like, hey, how you do? And you'd come back and, yeah, we're not the only, first of all, knowing that you're not the only one in the boat.
Right.
In the same boat. That you got a lot of other people there trying to figure the same thing out. But now you got a business card that it's like, okay, I see on the news that you guys are doing this. What's the deal on this?
Southeast Conference is my favorite, and that's the only one I miss. I'm not a big seminar. You know, I go to all of them. I feel like that's something the mayor should do. But you know, AML was always tough because I feel like AML is really geared toward a first-time elected official. You know, for training and everything. And the networking is valuable for sure, and it's really interesting. hearing like some of the stuff that's happening in the tribes, it's like another world, and I was fascinated by that. But the actual seminar part of it, I was like, oh, it's tough. I'm just sitting there. It's tough. It's tough. But Southeast Conference, the opposite. But it's more relative to us, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But Southeast full of characters, man. There is that too.
Oh, yes. Yes. I think Alaska's full of characters. I don't think we have our good share of them, but I think they're all over the state.
Hell, it's Sarah Hannon. Just her alone was worth the price of admission.
Yep.
It always cracks me up. I do miss that. I miss that a little bit. Those relationships with people. But it's nice going fishing a lot more often.
When I was on the assembly for city council and then the assembly, I never went to any of those. I was like, nah. But then after I told myself I was done in 2009, and a couple of years later, I had a chance to be on the board of directors for a buying group we belong to, and going to those meetings and listening to these people that have multiple stores. These guys are their second, third generation retailers and stuff, and sitting in the conversations like, oh, this is what I was missing.
Right.
All this knowledge that I'm learning from these guys and ladies and stuff. It's like, wow. So then when I became mayor and started going to those, it was with a whole different attitude.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh my God, I got to go to this. It's like, okay, I wonder who I'm going to learn from.
Yeah, that's a good attitude.
Who am I going to sit next to and have a conversation with, or who's going to make a comment in one of the open comment that's like, that's a different way of looking at it. It wasn't always the presenters that I was learning from, but the other elected officials in the room and their experience. Because, as you know, some of them are first time. Some of them have been in the position for 10, 15 years, whether it's city councils, borough assemblies, mayors, whatever. They've got a ton of experience. And listening to how they were progressing through things was a favorite part for me, is taking a total different mindset into those meetings that I had before.
Yeah,
and learning from them.
Well, like we were dealing with housing, which I was talking to somebody here in Haines today, and you guys are, starting to deal with housing here, and it's been an issue in Skagway since I've been there, and, it's still a very, prominent issue. You'd go to those and you'd have the person come speak who's done a housing trust in Juneau, and you can just go talk to them, and you'd be like, well, how did you do it? And then you bring all that information back to your community where everybody goes, well, that's stupid. But it seemed like a good idea.
It seemed like a good idea when you're talking to the person.
It seemed like that good idea.
Yep. So we could go down a long road on housing, and I think
boy.
Yeah.
And, it's like in Skagway, it's like banging your head against a wall. That's an issue in Skagway that is where you have a lot of different opinions. Everybody, depending on their take on it, is a bit self-serving with it, and that's what always makes issues more complicated. You got maybe 5 different factions of people who are really only motivated by their own self-interest and kind of not caring about what other people's interests are. And that's why it doesn't get solved, in my opinion. If you're somebody who needs seasonal housing, you want seasonal housing. If you're somebody who lives there year-round who wants to buy a house and they're all too expensive, you want affordable year-round housing. If you're somebody who wants to build a house, so now you can't get all these factions together. One is interested in congregate housing, one wants aggregate housing, one wants affordable housing. Now you're sitting at the table going, well, what is the definition of affordable? Can we define that just to start?
And that's the hard one for me, because everybody talks about affordable housing, and in my mind, it doesn't exist anymore.
No, I agree. I agree with you. It does,
because with the cost of building and with the devaluation of the dollar and stuff over the years, and wages have not risen with that same.
It's not.
It's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as affordable housing.
There's not. Now, there could be government subsidized housing, or you could do it through a trust.
Or you can do it through a trust and stuff.
And perhaps you could say, well, you're not going to pay for the property that's donated by the municipality, and you're going to build the home and then sell it to the individual for 15% less than the cost of construction, and they're going to have it. But they can't really build equity in it, or they can only build X amount of equity. And, that works in a place like Juneau, I feel like. It becomes a lot more complicated in a place like Skagway that's highly transient. Who's going to make a 20-year commitment or a 10-year commitment to building a house they're only going to get 25% equity out of,
Yep. Not going to happen.
It's unlikely to happen, right? Yep. But then do you want taxpayer subsidized seasonal housing for the business owners that can afford it?
They can,
And now you're down the rabbit hole far enough that you're already like, well, I don't want to go any further. We had a housing committee in Skagway that came up with some really interesting ideas that could actually work for Skagway. But then they got like totally ignored when they never. It was an ad hoc committee, and the mayor at the time didn't seem interested in bringing any of the ideas to the table, so it just kind of got stifled, which kind of sucks. But one of the people on that committee just got elected to assembly, and so I think they're going to start bringing
pushing some of that forward.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, give the opportunity for at least the community to say, well, maybe that's a good idea, or maybe it's not. But some of the stuff that she was running past me, I was like, that sounds like a great idea. I never thought of that. And it's way outside the box kind of thinking, which we always say in these small towns. We need to think outside the box,
but nobody wants to.
And or it's hard to.
Or it's hard to think
right?
that. Yeah,
it's hard. But man, they came up with some really cool ideas. One of the issues is like to build out beyond the bridge, you got to run electricity, sewer out there, or sewer, sewer water. But you're looking at 12 to 20 million to do it, and it's going to be 20, right? So, but they came up with these ideas that literally instead of 20 million, it could be like a $2 million fix. Oh, well, now we're in real world money. And
that's doable.
And I haven't done the research on it. I just got the peripheral information, but it sounded really promising. You could do that, and now you can start developing that land out there. It may not be quote unquote affordable housing, but you might be able to solve both problems. You might be able to get some year-round and some seasonal.
That gets me to a point that I think goes into the whole housing and part of the government. I was listening to a podcast a couple months ago, and this guy was talking about how the United States doesn't build anything big anymore. That if it's like the size of a school bus shipping container, we can build that efficiently in the United States. Much bigger than that, and it becomes a train wreck. And you look at a lot of the large municipal transportation programs, things like that, road building down south, especially even Alaska, cost overruns, takes longer, mass transit systems, Seattle, light rail's way over budget. The light rail in California or fast train or whatever they had, high speed rail, that was ridiculously over budget and you can't build it. Part of that, I think, goes into, and this is something that as at a local level and a state level, we have to figure out how we can fix it. How do we get roads built? How do we get sewer and water built that isn't so expensive? And how do we turn it around faster? We've got two roads, Piedad and Allen Road, from the storm in December of 2020 that still have not been repaired.
Oh.
You got 5 years, coming up on 5 years now.
Are they local or state?
Those are state. All the last local road I think got done. I think all the local ones finished up this year.
So much of DOT's money is absorbed into that bureaucracy. It's astounding.
And that's the thing is that these things cost so much that we cannot. It's hard to maintain our basic infrastructure anymore because of the costs associated with it. Why does it? And I know they've got roads around the state and everything like that, but 5 years, and you look at Juneau with the Suicide Basin flooding. That's been going on for a number of years. It's the only last 3 or 4 years that they've had major levels. They figure it's going to keep rising. The Army Corps says it's probably going to be 10 years to study it and come up with a solution and implement the solution. Hearing from residents during the slide event, when we closed Beach Road because of the slide, and we couldn't open it because we were worried about another slide coming down behind it until we got more geological. And
I remember, yeah.
And the stress and the trauma that was causing on those residents at the time was very real.
Remember, we were in communication.
We were talking about that.
The potential for tsunami.
Yep, the potential for tsunami, all these different things that were going on. And so we're trying to, as a borough, we're trying to make the best decisions, but you could feel the pain when you're talking to people.
Right.
And that was, I think it was about 8 months, and we were able to get that road opened up and get them power back to their houses, and so they could transfer out of there. I know it's on a different level, but you've got people for 5 years that are driving over these roads that are still reminding of them what happened, why those roads are in that condition.
Right.
Might not be every time they drive over it, but that's a connection. This road is in this bad condition because of the slide. You've got people in Juneau that, it only floods end of July, beginning of August. The people in that area, that's in their head all year round.
Right.
What kind of trauma is that causing for those people when it takes you're telling us it's going to be from when this got to be a major issue, what is it, 15 to 20 years before you have a solution when these people don't know if their house is going to be there the next year.
And it's not like you can sell it.
It's not like you can sell it. How can we justify taking that long to fix a problem? We can put dollar figures on it. What is the cost to the individuals that are dealing with that on a daily basis? I think it's huge,
Well,
and I don't
the
think
emotional toll is huge.
the
and
emotional
the money is huge. too.
Both of them are huge, but that emotional toll, I think, is going to add up when you're to more than the economic toll.
You're
of
living
it.
in fear.
You're living in fear every single day.
Yeah,
That cannot be good for that whole and so that
you're dealing with bureaucracy.
you're dealing with bureaucracy, but how do we get it through? How do we change the dynamic on this? That it's not just checking this box or you have to do this. It's like this is how this is impacting these people's lives
The people
on
in
a
those jobs
daily
have to
basis.
care. And
They
I-
have to care.
I don't think a lot of them care, man. I don't mean to sound.
I think
cynical
as
with that.
humans they have to care somewhat, but yeah, there's probably something that you
I
have
think
to
there's
give
a lot
up.
of pencil pushers in those departments.
Yeah, I guess
So-
I have more faith. I would hope there was more humanness to the people that, and maybe being in the seat kind of sucks it out of you over time.
Maybe. Well,
That
look
you're
at the
not seeing
Marine
anything
Highway.
happen.
So our dock, our ferry float sank in 2014.
Yep.
I drove on it today to come over here. That thing is falling apart. The concrete's just breaking off all over it, right? There was all this STIP money that was supposed to pay for the replacement of it way back in 2014. They're drawing triangles. Every time they draw a triangle, it's another 50,000 here, 75,000 there. The STIP money is getting eaten up. Still not fixed.
Still not fixed.
That was 2014, man.
Yeah.
So you remember when we had the Southeast Conference here in Haines just a few
Yep.
short years ago, and you remember that all of that money that Murkowski was able to get from the infrastructure package, and there was going to be all these millions of dollars going toward the ferry project, right? You remember we had done 4 studies in Skagway over the years, and about the feasibility of an electric ferry or an electric hybrid ferry.
Yep.
And right in line with what they wanted from the infrastructure bill, it was supposed to be more environmentally conscious type of construction. We knew first it's just one person at DOT, then there's more, then the AMHS is involved, and then all these people are involved. I'd already dealt with them on the MOU for the Broadway Peninsula. Oh my God! And so you remember all of this, and so we realized early on they're never going to let us build our ferry. That money. So we tried to switch gears. Well, maybe we can just get some shoreside infrastructure, so at least we can get our dock replaced, right? And we could potentially have the infrastructure so that we could hook the ferry up to the electric. So because we have renewable energy, right?
Yeah. All hydro.
We got hydro. And so funded a lot of it by local government. So everything's in line for what the thing was done. We could have had that thing built already. Nope. All the other entities involved, I won't say who they are because I don't want to be rude, but you know all the entities involved. And now there's a bunch of people involved. So what do they? Oh, they go, 14 of them hop on a plane and go to Norway so that they can research ferries. Oh, okay, sure. That's a thing that could be true. But then they come back and now there's a plan. Oh, we're going to have this plan. We're going to have these electric hybrid ferries or these that are going to be servicing, and they would have been built about right now.
Haven't even started one, have they?
Do you think it's ever going to be built?
Nope.
I don't either. And I'm not saying that to be cynical. I'm saying it because it's a fact. Because all that money is going to be absorbed into that bureaucracy. The Alaska Marine Highway, unfortunately, as much as we need it in these communities, it's slowly dying. And this was an opportunity to, build a couple of ferries with all of this. Was it $230 million or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
It went to Norway. They got mad at. I was the only meeting I ever walked out on as mayor was the one with DOT on that topic because I was like, we're 45 minutes in the meeting. And I was like, this is a waste of my time. It is obvious you guys have already made your decision. It's obvious that none of it's going to benefit this community who has done all this work on it, and you don't care about our opinion. So I'm done. And I walked right out.
Speaking of that, right shortly after the infrastructure bill passed, I had a conversation with Senator Murkowski, and I was congratulating her on the money that she got for the state for the ferry system and that. And I said, I hope the state doesn't screw it up. I said, I have no faith because you look back at the fast ferries, the Juneau access with the Hubbard and the Taslina, because it's supposed to go to, and so they canceled the road, but they're still building the boats, and then
retrofitting doors.
Then they have to retrofit the doors. They have to put crew quarters on. All this, the myriad of mistakes and the millions and millions of dollars that AMHS has wasted on ferries that didn't work and plans that didn't work is so. I was like, I hope that we'll at least get one boat out of this.
Bureaucracies become organisms that are self-sustaining. And so expedience is not something that sustains that particular organism.
Correct.
And this is why those types of bureaucratic organisms eventually become so completely ineffective and useless, they fall apart, which is what's happening slowly with the marine highway system and why you don't get roads repaired. And why, you could list a myriad other things on a local, state, and federal level where bureaucracies utterly and completely consume anything good that could have possibly happened out of it. And the longer it takes, the slower it goes, the more money can be squeezed back into the bureaucracy. Because the bureaucracy feeds on money. And the money's always moving, right?
Money's always moving.
As long as it's moving in. So again, like STIP money we got for, we're supposed to have a new dock. It'll sink again, or it looks like it's about to fall apart. And once the shoreside infrastructure is gone, thank God we're going to have that Cascade Point ferry terminal. That's a winner that nobody wanted.
Yeah.
So again, we go back to that thing we talked about earlier. That's corruption. There's no other explanation for it. I'm not going to point the finger at one individual, but that's corruption by definition. When everybody says, no, we don't want this thing, and the people in power say, yeah, you want that thing, and we're going to build it. And we don't care if your dock sinks into the ocean, and we don't care about your new ferries, then you know what's already happening.
Yep.
And I don't know how you get over that, because if corruption runs that deep where you can just blatantly do whatever you want to do, and the people who are involved in it just have to throw up their hands and accept the fact that there's a ferry being built with no way to get to Juneau from it, that'll probably be shut down as soon as the mine shuts down. And we're all kind of screwed on that front, which is why a big fan, you heard it at that Southeast Conference, if we could have just gotten a piece of that money, we'll build our own ferry that could service Haines, Skagway, Juneau. Because we have to become independent of these bureaucracies if we're going to survive as communities. Now, I believe that, and I know that I'm probably in a minority of people, or maybe a lot of people don't think about it that way, and that's fine, but talk to me in 15 years when there is no ferry dock, and people are trying to figure out how they're going to get to Juneau when the weather's bad. God forbid the border's closed again.
And I think that's the biggest thing facing both of our communities is, and that was one thing I kept trying to work on as mayor and made absolutely no progress, is access.
Right.
Access to our communities is vital for the long-term health and continuation of the communities. Because Skagway's got a lot of cruise ship passengers in the summertime, but if you don't have a way to get in and out in the wintertime,
the ferry.
If you don't have the ferry coming in, and if anything we try to do in Haines to increase economy in the wintertime requires people.
We're 15 miles away.
We're 15 miles.
So hard to get.
We can't get to each other.
A flight's $200.
Yeah.
And so the ferry, I came over the weekend. I'd preferred to come during the week for the business I need to do here, but next week there's only a ferry on Monday and Friday.
Yeah.
So that's pointless. So I was like, well, I'll just see if people are willing to perhaps meet with me on a Saturday. People in Haines are like people in Skagway. They're very nice, and they're very giving of their time, which is I'm grateful for that. But it's a bummer. And I'm grateful that we have any ferry because again, I just don't think it'll be around in 10 years. And hopefully that's wrong. Maybe the blueprints are going to be drawn up here next week, and everybody comes through at the last minute. But man, I haven't heard a peep out of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be holding your breath.
No, and with Cascade Point getting built, is there even money for it? So. They when Dunleavy was first elected, there was basically he put out that letter. It's like, oh, it's a fire sale. We want to get rid of these buildings. If your municipalities want to take this infrastructure on, we'd be happy to give it to you. Part of that initial effort to try and do some privatization, right? And so we jumped on it. Yes, we want to take control of our ferry peninsula. it's a situation where they lease it. If they ever stop ferry service, the lease terminates and Skagway owns the property. So it's very different than the agreements they have in other communities. But, oh no, we don't want to do that. Well, he wanted to do it. Dunleavy wanted to do it. But the bureaucracy is
like, oh, no, we can't let him.
Who won that battle? The bureaucracy won, because I don't care how powerful you are. Yep. The bureaucracy consumes all.
Yep. Yep.
So, I don't know. I hope that doesn't sound too pessimistic about ferries. I know that'll get people riled up. That's just my opinion. And unless somebody steps in with some common sense, I don't know how you can even park a ferry if the dock doesn't exist.
Makes it much more challenging.
Yeah, and so, I'm like, well, so I worked 4 years. We dealt with DOT. They came, and every excuse in the book from marine highway people, every excuse in the book, you have to have this fence around here. And I'm like, this fence? There's giant gaps in the fence. And so I was jumping back and forth between the gaps in the fence. I'm like, this fence?
This fence?
That is completely deteriorated? So the MARSEC is that important?
Yeah.
Nobody's even paying attention to the infrastructure. There were derelict trailers and vehicles that people had just abandoned on that property.
On the property, yeah.
So I was complaining about it all the time, like, we don't really want these here. It's your property, but you've allowed people to do this. So I don't know. And eventually we got the MOU drawn up and put together, but you could tell they're doing it reluctantly. But we did everything right. The assembly 100% unanimous. Yes, we want to develop this. We will have a ferry component. We will work with private industry in partnership to build it. So it wouldn't even cost the state any money. Well, you know how that turned out.
Well, on that bright note,
yeah,
we'll bring this to a close so you can get some rest because you got all those fish to catch tomorrow.
Well, yeah, you're damn right. I got to get, you got to have a good night's sleep before fishing, and then the inspiration will hit you in the morning where to go catch them.
Where to go catch them?
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you making this part of your trip to Haines, Andrew, and
hey, thanks for having me.
This conversation. It's been a great conversation as always, and maybe we'll do it again.
Sounds good. I had never been in a podcast, and one of my quests in life has always been to try things that I've never done before. So, but really, it's just a conversation with you.
It's just a conversation. That's the plan on these. Just sit down and have a conversation with people and listen to different perspectives. And I know I'm better after listening to other people and having these dialogues with people. And maybe somebody listening will appreciate the back and forth of different ideas and thoughts. And I don't think that I'm going to change anybody's minds, but if they just hopefully enjoy the conversation.
People are pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And one last thing, shop at Olerud's for all of your sporting goods needs.
All right, appreciate it, Andrew.
Always good, man.
Yeah. Thanks for watching this episode of Doug Has Questions. Just a reminder, if you've enjoyed the conversation today, please like, subscribe, and we're available on YouTube if you want to watch us. If you just want to listen, it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you have new episodes being launched every Thursday. So thanks again for watching or listening and following us. We appreciate your support.